threatening.
I mean, good morning. It is. Right, as soon as I don't.
That's a perfect thing to start on.
Yeah. Thank you, Liz.
That'll get us some likes.
Oh, that's what I was wondering. That's it. Okay. We're not family members. For public building. Okay, great. There was another thing about workers and I didn't know if that was that. Okay. Thank you, Linda, so much. Good morning. It is May 3rd. We are going to end May 10th. I'm convinced of it.
Our session will end. We will continue.
Yes. I don't know.
I'm planning to continue.
That makes sense.
You have good hormones, so.
Yes, that's true. They are good most of the time. Senate Economic Development is our committee, and we're starting with amendments related to our housing bill that are on the floor. I don't know which one. Are you representing the eviction related one?
Yeah, we voted on Wendy's,
We
right?
voted on, or did anything change? Are you all set?
We just changed, you're talking about the transportation one, right?
Well, let's start with, I know of 3 amendments right now.
Oh, you do?
John, I don't know if you could confirm or deny anything else. Yours, Tom Chittenden's, which I consider friendly. I don't know if he's coming in.
I haven't seen that one.
It was, so we had a discussion about housing goals and metrics that came from the House. And it, both Senator Gray and I felt like, okay, we've talked about the areas we're gonna negotiate and we can't add anything else. But I think we both wanna add this. It's very benign, and Representative Krasnow worked with the HFA. And then one more said, this is actually really good.
Goals?
Yes,
Good.
and the commissioner agreed, everybody agreed. So I think both Senator Gray and I have agreed this feels very friendly and something that fell through the cracks. So 2, that's 2. And then eviction related issues is probably where we spend the bulk of our time this morning. You're all set.
So mine is the transportation one.
Yes.
The only change that we made was to put VAPTA. It's the Vermont Association.
Yeah.
Okay.
Planners and
Yeah. Well, no, the transit providers. We just put
the
them
transit
as
providers within VAPTA or
not VAPTA. Darn.
Oh.
VAPTA?
Yeah, BPTA. Sorry.
Okay.
No, but they're one of the members instead of just being referenced as general transit providers in the body.
Okay.
That's it. That was
I
only.
think that's technical and not that.
Yeah.
There is a 4th amendment,
Okay.
Ellen, I think it's just.
Oh, yes, I should explain to the committee, there is a 4th amendment, we found one more instance, vestige of appeal language that needs to be taken out. And something else that I'm supposed to report, that I forgot. I'll remember before. It's like taxation.
Affected, strike.
Oh,
I think there's some cleanups.
there's the
Surprising. I'm shocked.
property transfer tax on second homes taking effect has an effective date issue of some sort.
It seems that, yes.
Can we not be retroactive?
No. But I am trying to look at other ways to raise this money in the yield bill.
But we're trusting you to do that. Any other ideas will funnel your way.
Thank you. So all 3 of those are pretty straightforward, I think. We're okay.
I would like to see the language of them though.
They're
Yes.
printed now.
And is Tom planning to come in or?
I hadn't heard from him now,
Okay.
but I emailed.
I can do it if you want me to do it.
Why don't you do it? He gets confused. Let's just walk
He was
through it
just-
and we're printing it. Oh, was he here?
He's here.
No, but in this room or?
Tom is not in this room.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
No, was he? Okay. Well, why want to lose our cord?
No, I am just texting Tanya to see if she'd like to come in too.
Yeah, that probably would be good because I
I'm
think.
happy to represent it, but
No, I think we're gonna have a big decision to make. I don't have my other 2 members, but
well, there maybe the members they have more.
some input, yeah. Yeah.
I'm gonna give her 5 minutes.
Okay.
Right, sorry, Joe. I'm listening and texting at the same time.
And I imagine we're losing John at 9 because you're
Yes.
losing me at 9 too. So
Where are you going?
to Senate Health and Welfare about being
Ah,
2021.
Yeah, they have a big amendment,
Uh,
which
Alright, so let's ask all the hard questions now.
Yeah, so we should get through this and try to move to the eviction one and see if we're setting a direction, because I may have to leave before that decision is made and we may have to return to that decision.
And then maybe Randy will come back.
Yeah, and John, what is your timing this morning how long are you in Senate Health Welfare, like, principal?
So I think I'm there through 10, but then when I looked at their agenda, it made it seem like I might be there through 10:30.
Okay,
But otherwise, I can be available for stuff. And then obviously at noon, we have whatever's happening with that Q&A.
We have the Q and A in
so,
other one.
okay, so it's unlikely we would take up 687 before noon because of the Q and A
I
at
agree.
lunch, so.
I would hope we would not, because that's the whole point of our
Okay,
having this.
so
Oh,
we
you should
don't have
announce from doing that to the public in case they're interested.
public, we are having a Q and A from noon to 1 with the drafters of the bill, so people can ask all of their objective and language oriented questions to our wonderful drafters, mostly Ellen, John, and Kirby, I would imagine. And maybe JFO will be there as well. Thank you for doing that.
Sure.
So I think that might give us time. We meet at lunch if we're circling up on a direction for the eviction amendment after getting feedback from our committee and possibly others.
So we're doing Chittenden one now,
Yes, let's do that.
and then I'm ready to do the other.
And if we can move quickly through the Chittenden one, so we can start looking at eviction, that would be good.
Right.
John Gray, Office of Legislative Counsel. I just sent these for posting, but I can pull up the PDF, which will be.
Oh, great, and then Magali kindly is having them printed.
Could I get a Zoom link? Sorry.
What do we,
And while we're doing that, Magali, Michelle is only available from 9 to 9:30 and then at 10:15, right? Okay, so we will vote that at 9. You should hear from, I worked with Michelle on some language that feels like a compromise in a lot of places on cannabis. I have her draft 2 advertising related amendments so people can look at them and decide. I think I heard from the Medical Society, they don't have an issue with them. So, and I talked to government operations in the House that they don't have an issue with them, so
With the advertisements.
with the 2 changes, while John's doing that, John, tell me, you can interrupt me when you're ready. It would be to get rid of the prohibition on inducements. So that they could start to do coupons or something like that, and then
Like the cigarette companies do.
I think everyone does coupons.
Well,
Because sports
But
betting
that's-
does coupons.
and the medical people are fine with that?
They, yesterday, I mean, they're coming in, but
Okay.
they didn't have an issue. They were worried more about 21 related issues. Most of these inducements happen within the store. And that the pre-approval for advertising would be optional. You could get a recommendation or a opinion from the CCB. But otherwise, like everything else, it would be complaint driven. You feel like you're seeing an advertisement that is too close to a school or, you know,
So that's a pretty big change
they are big changes, so.
to do.
Yeah, what I have been trying to have conversations with others because that is a very unique thing we make them go through.
But they are a very unique business.
Well, so you guys can have that conversation.
Okay.
What I heard from the committee is you were willing to see amendments around advertising, and those are the ones that have the most agreement and don't seem to be offending people, because for a lot of really small businesses, you know, like you had Pepper say, I would never let them do a Super Bowl commercial, and yet huge out-of-state companies doing sports betting could do Super Bowl commercials.
I think sports betting is a mistake too, so.
Right,
Do we want to do this? Sorry.
yes, but it's a free speech issue at that
yeah,
point.
we have to move
Okay,
on.
you're right, yeah, you should interrupt.
Let's do it.
Okay.
So this is Senator Chittenden's proposed amendment to H 687. This is actually language that you guys have seen before, but I'll just remind you of what the idea here is. This is a housing accountability section. What this is premised on is in S100, you guys had tasked the Department of Housing and Community Development with developing statewide and regional housing targets. This would be part of regional plans. Those are to be published in the next statewide housing needs assessment, which I understand is due any day now. So these have not been released yet, but the idea is that once those have been published, developing metrics to ensure that there is annual and cumulative measure of progress. You guys can get a report each year telling you, have you actually done what you're meant to do for this particular year? So it's a way of just ensuring that each year you can check on progress. That's the whole idea behind this. And it's tied to those new statewide and regional housing targets. So what does it require? The development of particular metrics that are meant to lend themselves to easy understanding of how much progress has been made. So for any housing target, a timeline that separates those targets into discrete steps with specific deadlines. Because you can imagine that some targets, maybe that's 15 years from now, it's hard to say on a yearly basis if you're actually doing enough. And it may not be that progress needs to be linear. It may need to be, let's say parabolic, but something other than.
Lumpy,
Yep.
technical, sure.
For any regional housing target, a rate measuring progress broken into price, quality, unit size, or type, zoning district as applicable. This particular language is the same as what's in S100, so this matches existing terms, but it's meant to say, hey, what you guys are trying to measure is, we say that progress is made in terms of amount of investment, number of units produced, to make sure that there's rates for each of those, so you can see on each metric what you're actually succeeding in doing or not succeeding in doing. Department of Housing and Community Development.
Okay, right, that's right.
That's a quick question, maybe a quick question. Is there any metric that deals with massive new developments or new developments of a certain size? Like similar to inclusionary zoning, where you would have a percentage goal of affordability?
So the underlying language from S100 does require that the housing is achieving, and I don't know the exact percentage, but it spells out this affordability piece. So
Okay.
this is, you won't see the language in here because it's in S100, but those targets are meant to accommodate achieving affordable housing, not just housing
Okay.
writ large. So that is built in, it's just not in the language that you
Correct.
see here.
And there is a number in S100.
I believe so. I think it's, what is it? I don't know.
No, don't say, yeah, but I'll find it. Thank you.
Yes, and I can, the place you can look is 24 VSA 4348A. I can say that again.
Yeah.
24 VSA 4348A.
48, perfect, thank you.
Shall we?
Yeah, that's
Yep.
great.
So additionally, they'll report on steps taken to achieve any actions recommended to satisfy those needs. So this may be, maybe rates of progress aren't as easily measured, but you could say particular steps have been taken. After the department has developed those metrics, they will use them to set annual goals. And the idea here is, again, so that there can be regular check-ins. So that's what this subsection B does, is saying, using those newly developed metrics, set annual goals for achieving the targets.
Yeah.
I'm gonna move us along. We have 1 minute left to consider this so we can get to eviction. And I want to see if anyone has questions, but we have looked at this language before.
Yep, so just the one other big piece I would call out about this is once those goals and annual targets have been set, part of the report that has to be provided, the department has to say an overall assessment whether progress is satisfactory, and then if it's not, they have to recommend certain things to accelerate progress. That's the idea here. And happy to answer.
I mean, it would be great if they also reported to their boss, the governor, before the budget happened.
Sorry, I'm trying to find the section of,
Anyway, we can.
John, can I interrupt you before I go to Senate Health and Welfare? They have added to the study of the prior right of action.
yeah, they've added some pieces there to build out clarity for the process for notifying of, like providing notice of violations and.
But there is no, I'm looking at the highlighting in their amendment.
So the highlighting is telling them what's new for this next draft. If you want a broader sense of all the things that are different from what you have, that's a bigger piece.
Okay, so they do have,
They do have a
Private
highlight.
right.
But very narrow. On the stuff that.
it's
informs-
sensitive data.
Yes, that's all the stuff that informs the deep fakes, which is what we're all, a lot of
And
us.
we
are worried
have
about.
struck, we had struck photographs, video,
Yeah.
et cetera, they put it back in.
Yes, because if you don't, anyway.
I wait,
You'll have
okay,
that
I
conversation.
just, and I'm glad clarify that with you, because it looked at first like they just wanted to.
No,
Which I
they
love
have
the highlighted language, I think that would be very appropriate. Anyway, I'm gonna tell
So
them that.
we have, and we also have Tanya Cruz to get to.
Yes, so does anyone have any questions? Otherwise, I'm gonna move us to.
No, this
the
looks
informal
great.
vote. Okay.
Yeah.
I think this
So,
looks good.
sounds like the informal vote is 302.
I think that sounds good.
I will try to find Anne and Randy and make sure they're
So
okay.
this basically builds on something that exists and that can be.
Yes, and
more
that we had wanted to get is
What is
built.
there a number of this? I'm sorry. Oh, it's a, am I supposed to be
Right.
keeping track of shit?
No, this is.
No, it's all right.
Committee.
We're doing 687
I
amendment.
can have it from chair if you wanna let.
Who has the language up?
I do have the link, but I can share.
So John, I would stay in there and just walk us
Yeah.
through the language.
We have it. And Tanya and I are here.
And you're welcome to speak, but I just wanna make sure we haven't had a chance to look at the language yet.
No, and just as we get it up, just this, Keisha and I served on government operations. And now Tanya and I serve on government operations, and we have now had 4 or 5 charters come through that we've not been able to do their no cause eviction pieces that their cities have voted
I
on.
reported the first one that we passed. in the
Yeah, the
Senate.
borough was Burlington. And so this amendment really, as a pilot, sets forth the idea that we give the green light to the towns that have passed it already to do no cause eviction, and then it will help inform us as we discuss this. After the report comes back, it will help inform our conversation. So,
Yep, so this is a proposed no cause evictions moratorium for specific municipalities that have already passed amendments to their charters authorizing ordinances that provide protections to residential tenants from no cause evictions. So that's the idea here, really straightforward concept. There's a bit of detail here just because we need some technical terms. So this is for a temporary period. This is beginning on the effective date and ending on December 31st, 2026. The municipalities in which this would apply are those municipalities that have passed, as stated, an amendment to their charters after 2020. So this is time limited. If you happen to accidentally have something from 20 years ago, it doesn't pick that up. And I want to say that maybe 4 towns are picked up by this. It could be more.
Burlington, Essex Town, Montpelier, and Winooski.
Okay, so this one I do need to ask questions on.
Oh, yeah, I might not be here while you're
Okay.
asking us questions, but we
And
do
I
need
might not
to.
also.
Yes, John and I need to leave at 9.
Okay, so if a municipality wants to authorize that now,
They can, yes, because
okay,
the
so
requirement here is.
new ones
A
are,
municipality that has passed an amendment to a charter after 2020, it doesn't say in the past 5 years, which would be another way of doing that, but that would cut it off and effective.
okay,
This is, if someone passes, once this is done, they would be kicked into it.
okay,
So municipalities that have passed an amendment to their charter after 2020, authorizing them to provide protections for residential tenants from no cause evictions. The second piece just sets out what can be done. So during the temporary period, those tenants, a landlord cannot terminate their tenancy for no cause, and it sets out the particular statutory citations, but they may continue to terminate those tenancies for all these reasons, and I will call out specifically the one that is permissible under the no cause statutory cites. This is in subdivision A here. Because the landlord or a member of the landlord's immediate family has a good faith intention to occupy the premises, that is still preserved here. That's what we've seen in previous evictions moratoriums in the state. So this matches language that the state has used before. It's just that it applies to particular authorized municipalities and is for a period that extends to December 31st, 2026. Otherwise permitted to terminate for failure to pay rent, failure to comply with material terms of the rental agreement, engaging in criminal activity, illegal drug activity, standard stuff that you see under landlord tenant laws, and if the building is sold. So this matches a concept that's done before. It's just geographically limited is the idea here.
So it gives the municipality the authorization as well to add more details. Maybe Montpelier wants to say, we're gonna do it this way. Because some might go back to their rules and say, oh, we wanna make sure if someone needs to do a renovation or this, they have the ability to do that. Others might have different definitions of no cause.
So technically, this what I would say is this sets a firm bar on what cannot be done.
Okay.
If people wanted to,
Oh, and then this is the May term.
yep, so what
Okay.
cannot be done under this definitively in any of these places is termination for no cause pursuant to
Got it.
4467 C or E, which is your no cause sections, except or in the instance in which immediate families has a good
Okay.
faith intention to occupy the premises.
And that's,
So that's a
Can
status.
I say one thing before I have to go, and then, I mean, you have to go too, but what I think we should be weighing is, this and, another, amendment that would change our study language, and I haven't done any vote counting, et cetera, but I'd like to see something move forward. This is going to be a big conversation on the floor. And I just like to make sure we are also strengthening the eviction study.
where is that amendment? The strengthening the eviction study.
It doesn't exist. So that's, but there are people who propose more language that I'm looking at Senator Vyhovsky. I don't know if you want to say anything before I go as well about, the possibility in addition to or substituting, either way, it's not my amendment.
No.
That would make it, add more tenant spaces to the.
Yeah, Senator Tanya Vyhovsky, for the record, I represent Chicken Central District, and I've heard from some people that they feel like the current eviction study is a little bit unbalanced. And are hoping to add some more tenant voice to that board, and I'm certainly happy to,
And a public process.
yeah, and a public process, so there would be a requirement for public
Mhm.
hearings, and I'm certainly happy to ask for an additional amendment to be drafted.
That would be good.
Or,
Yeah,
or maybe this is a little more challenging, but maybe should we do another amendment to that effect, or should we add to this one?
I think my preference would be to do another amendment, because I do think that.
yeah, I think that reorganization,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm Michelle, okay, so we have to do a changing of the guards, but I don't
I'm
have a
happy to do
quorum,
that with you if you want.
so.
What, Senator Clarkson?
I'm happy to do that with you.
Okay, yeah,
if you'd like.
that would be amazing. I
Well,
will
he then
email.
should
talk
be
to John
walking
about
in any
I
minute.
haven't, because I wanted to talk to Senator Robinson first. And now we've had that discussion, so I will email John and Alice.
Yeah. But so third reading though is today,
Yes.
Yes,
so.
That's why I'm suggesting
Yes.
that, but it's after lunch, I'm not saying it's like all the time in the world, but I think Senator Vyhovsky gets what I'm saying, that, now there's some question of, strategy, and I just wanna make sure other language is drafted.
yes, I will email as soon as I get back to my computer, Senator Clarkson. Do you want to be included in that email?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I would love to just to keep up.
Perfect, I will loop y'all in.
I suggest
Okay.
doing that, so. Yeah. Let's go.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Thank
John,
you.
thank you for your help.
Thank you, John. Sounds like, John's occupied at lunch with the 687 Q&A.
And we have our Q and A in the lounge.
I'm gonna go back to judiciary and I will send that email right now.
Okay, thank you.
So-
Thanks so much.
10:30 and noon.
I love that, I love that article.
John, thank you. Good luck.
John, just so you know, they're not on one footing.
Okay,
But you should.
I'll still go, but yes.
If
I'll-
we keep you, we'll make you late.
Oh, can we keep patient?
I'll ask you.
I only have to
I do
because I
have
don't
a
have a
question
quorum.
just on the, we're on meeting on Rand.
Well, Senator,
I don't
it's
have
it's caucus.
You know what, let me, I'll.
If you wanna email, I can.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Thanks.
Hello, everyone. So just to remind folks, we have Michelle for the next half hour. I may have to leave at some point to go to Senate Health and Welfare. There is 15 minutes of committee discussion, which, again, we have to have quorum. But it can be amongst the committee for any of the bills we plan to vote today, which looks like 2. So of course, you might want to discuss amendments to 687, but anything on the agenda, you might want to keep that to that 15 of the committee. While I'm not here, that's fine. If you do break, please be back by 9:45 sharp, because otherwise 7:04 doesn't have enough time for consideration.
Or enough people, maybe.
And
Hi, good morning. No rush, I'm still waiting for a Zoom.
so, and to set the table from my end, I've taken a lot of feedback of folks recognizing that this bill essentially has to be voted out today. I just talked to Senator Starr this morning. We are getting language from Senator Lyons. Before I forget, Michelle, Senator Starr is gonna bring forward one more thing that he's worked with Mike O'Grady on. That allows, it's something about allowing drying of cannabis products in a hay barn type of on-farm facility. So using on-farm building for cannabis processing.
I think we talked about that already.
Okay, well, it's just.
That's gonna go in this and not in miscellaneous ag.
I think Senator Starr just asked me to do that this morning.
I thought it was in this. And the fire
Was that like
safety folks were gonna look at it, because it had to do with the drying of the.
Yes, the drying,
Yeah,
is that already in here?
yeah, or something about drying,
Okay.
it's in here.
Anyway, I haven't brought you anything that we haven't discussed in committee or hasn't been proposed to us. I brought things for discussion, that seemed to be along the lines of what the committee was willing to have final conversations about before we vote the bill out. We will have Vermont Medical Society coming in informally. They told me they don't have a problem with any of these sections. They were more concerned about keeping the 21 age limit intact, and I don't think we've changed that. Okay, I was like, did I miss something?
No, and I'm just gonna, this morning,
Yes.
for the first section, I'm just gonna walk you through the recommendations from Health and Welfare. And then I
Okay,
gotta
great.
go to another committee and then I'll be back later this morning
Okay.
on your amendment.
Okay. So we are looking, we just got draft 1.2. That is the Committee on Health and Welfare.
And would you like me to share my screen or?
You see if we
I
got
think we
it.
got it.
What is that?
What's handed to us?
Oh, 6.
It's just it starts out, Senate Committee on Health and Welfare recommends to economic development.
That's just their section, so it's not full, right?
Right, no, it's
No,
right all.
yeah. No, because these are just for you to consider, and then if you approve them, and then after, later this morning, if you, whatever you approve for yours, and then they can combine them.
Okay,
Are we ready?
yeah.
Okay, great. So for the record, Michelle Childs, Office of Legislative Counsel, and as you know, Senate Health and Welfare took quite a bit of testimony and spent some time looking at the medical provisions in H612, and they have a few amendments that they are recommending to you. Would you like me to pop it up, or do y'all have it, or what's your preference?
We have it printed, but I think popping it up always helps.
For the public.
Okay, sure.
When they just issued this.
Oh, thank you.
The old one, or is there something?
The only one that.
I
appears to
don't-
exist.
yeah.
Oh, okay, I thought it was.
No, we just haven't gotten it.
Okay.
Okay, so first instance of amendment is making a few changes to the rulemaking for the board with regard to the medical use endorsement. So you'll recall that the bill as it came over from the House establishes a procedure where a retailer who is just licensed to be selling in the retail market could get what's called a medical use endorsement to be able to essentially kind of be like a mini dispensary selling under those types of rules around those types of products and those things to registered patients and caregivers. And the bill as it came from the House required the board to do some rulemaking on the medical use endorsements. And Senate Health and Welfare just wanted to kind of beef that provision up a little bit. So what you see in the first instance of amendment there in subdivision G, the requirements for medical use endorsement, and they're to include rules regarding the protection of patient privacy and confidentiality of records, enhanced training and educational requirements for employees who interact with patients. So you'll recall that as the bill is in, that as it came over, and then under existing law has a really super long list for all types of employees, for training and those types of things for all establishments. But Senate Health and Welfare wanted to really kind of have some specificity around specific training. So there's a little bit of redundancy in these provisions. It's not like they're not already required to do things like record keeping and things like that, but they wanted to put that in there specifically with regard to this new type of endorsement. You'll see on line 13, segregation of cannabis products that are otherwise prohibited. You know, there's different types of products that, with higher concentrations that can be sold to patients but not available in the commercial market. So they wanted to add that. Access for patients under 21 years of age, because in the medical program, you can be under 21 years of age, but you have to be 21 if you're gonna access the commercial market. And then health and safety requirements. So that's all just about rulemaking for the board to kind of, you know, set forth the criteria.
And those are actually two important differences that are still make the medical marijuana piece more viable for people. And keep it as an enhancement, higher concentrations and under 21.
Yep, you also have the option of delivery.
And delivery.
And this is one of, I think, the big ones. I don't think there's a lot that are doing delivery, but that is an option for people who have mobility issues.
Right.
And you do have, in current law, there is a requirement that the General Assembly do what it can essentially to maintain the medical program. You know, even though you've got now this big commercial.
Right, so they're doing cannabis.
That's why he's here.
Just a couple questions. I think this is all good stuff. We also have, but this doesn't take away anything that is already in the underlying bill, right?
Mhm.
So the, having the registered caregivers is important too. And actually delivery is there, but I can talk about that later. But, does privacy in this case include physical privacy in the store?
Not a separate.
Because that was an issue too.
Right, and you know, and I think James Pepper has talked about this, you know, many times
Yeah.
in the context of what they would envision for this, is that you know, if you had a retailer that was also serving patients, they're gonna be developing rules on kind of options to maintain patient confidentiality. So things that he's talked about are things like it could be that there's certain
Certain hours,
days
yeah.
or hours that are available just for patients. It could be that there's, you know, if you had a building and you know, here's the retail shop, but right kind of next door through another door, there's something a little more private, those types of things.
Okay.
And so those are the things that they're gonna contemplate in order to consider.
Good. Because that's what we heard about before.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so second instance of amendment. So as I mentioned, you have to be 21 years old for the commercial, but you can be under 21 for the medical. There used to be, before Vermont changed the law in 2020 with regard to adding a new commercial, kind of setting up a new commercial program, you might recall that the medical program was regulated by the Department of Public Safety. And there was a whole host of laws there. And then when it transitioned over, because there was now going to be a commercial market, the legislature chose to kind of remove some of the hurdles in the medical program because they thought, well, if you can walk into a retail store and purchase, you know, we don't want to make it too hard for other folks who are patients to be able to access the medical. And so there were some things that were removed in 2020 that were requirements, things around, so you remember the process for getting on the medical is you have to have a qualifying medical condition, and you have to have your healthcare provider sign a medical verification form. It's not a prescription or anything like that. All they're doing is saying that this person is my patient and they have MS or they have HIV, whatever it is, right? And so when the change was made in 2020, the legislature removed what had been there, which was you had to have a prior 3-month relationship with that medical provider
Oh, right.
before they could
Oh, right. 'Cause
attest
they're
to you
not-
having MS or that sort of thing. And they had to give you a physical examination. And so those are no longer in the medical law. What subsection E does at the top of page 2 is it reinstitutes those requirements for under 21. So you'll see there is it's really just kind of went back to the old language. And if someone is under 21 and they're applying to be a patient, they would have to have the healthcare professional would have to complete a full assessment of the applicant's medical history, current medical condition, including a personal physical examination. So there could be no telehealth here with regard to the under 21s. And then there's some exceptions for when the 3-month requirement doesn't apply. So things like if they have a terminal illness, cancer, if they're under hospice care, like those types of things. And so I will just note, and I mentioned to the chair that when everything's going so fast right now, and we picked up the old language and it used to use the term debilitating medical condition, but now it's qualifying medical condition. And so if you choose to incorporate this language into the economic development amendment, I would just switch out that term.
Qualifying.
What line is
But-
debilitating?
On 17th,
It's in a few places just in that.
does it have the
instance
same
of
meaning?
amendment. It is the same thing. It just used to be the list of conditions that would get you on. It's the same. It's just.
We kept adding them every year to add. So, right.
So on that topic of adding, is the third instance of amendment, which is a cannabis control board study for cannabis control board. They have so many studies
You know,
every
a lot of
year.
people do. Well, it's also new, so it makes sense.
Yeah. So, the board is to work in consultation with Department of Health, VMS and other interested parties to assess the efficacy of the medical cannabis program in serving patients. And then you'll see at top of page 4, there's 3 things that they're supposed to focus on. First one's improvements to the process of evaluating and approving new qualifying conditions, because that is, for Allison's been here, a long time, and it's like every year there's kind of discussion, do we add,
We added a ton of.
do we add this, do we add that, and so, and then there's in different states approached in different ways about how new qualifying medical conditions get on the list, and so they're gonna come back and, talk about that. You'll see subdivision 2, improvements on how the use of cannabis is communicated to patients and patients' providers. And 3, appropriate regulations regarding.
Brock, I have to go to health and welfare quickly. You help us maintain a forum, thank you.
Absolutely.
And Senator Cummings is talking to JFO, so she should be in soon too. You are in charge, Senator Clarkson.
Oh, joy, a rapture. And,
Can I ask you a question in this?
absolutely, go for it. I just need Magali to do an agenda for today's special resolution of our timing.
There should be a fresh one on your desk.
Okay, I just don't see it. Maybe I'm covered. I see it. Friday, May 3rd. Got it.
Okay,
Great, go
just a
for it.
question. Improvements on how the use of cannabis is communicated to patients or I'm just thinking like the efficacy or the benefits or new information. I mean, what is this? What was the,
I think I'll.
okay. All right, I'll leave it, but I think it should be like updates on how to, what it's good to use it for, right? But
Well, you can't really be making, there's.
It's
or
not.
It's a little-
positive or negative, I guess.
Yeah, it's a little bit,
But-
it's a little tricky, because of it being a Schedule 1 drug now, which sounds as though that may be changing in several months.
That was good news the other day.
Is that, folks haven't been able to study it, and so it's not like you can point to all these studies that say
Oh, okay.
it is,
All right.
recommended for this or that, so it's a little bit of a tricky topic, and I think we wanna talk about how the board handles that. I think I would speak to James.
Okay, it's just an interesting phrase, improvements to how the use is communicated.
It could have been, I'm not always in committee. when
Okay.
People are discussing stuff now because have to be in so many places,
Yeah.
so I anticipate that this came either from a recommendation from VMS or someone, or it could have been just some discussion around the
Okay.
table.
Okay,
Around that.
I'll
It's
just,
broad and enables a wide variety, but it does not, I believe, include advertisements.
no, I didn't want I was just curious about,
They might
What it
address it, but again, this is just
Yeah.
a report back. This is just about
Okay.
talking to, so it doesn't identify that. It's just in general, how is the information
Cannabis.
around medical use of cannabis
Six,
or
well,
cannabis to use as treatment.
I'll live with the mystery.
On the third instance.
So the third instance, so the third subdivision there at the top of page 4 is appropriate regulations regarding vapes essentially. So there was some discussion in Senate Health and Welfare about banning vaping cartridges and vapes in the cannabis market. Chair Pepper said that so the board's concern was less about the actual cartridges containing the cannabis oil, because those are required to go through testing. And his concern was that banning those types of things then moves people to the illegal market. And you might remember several years ago, there was the issue where there were a lot of people died by using kind of illegal illicit vapes that had been cut with.
Or something bad.
It was like vitamin E.
Oh.
But apparently that's really not good to be ingested.
Was it vitamin D?
Vitamin D
Yeah.
acetate.
Acetate. So it was something that I think people were using for viscosity. But was very harmful and actually killed a lot of people. And so from the board's perspective, it's that thing about if you remove a product, do you drive people to the illicit market, which is potentially much more dangerous, and because it's not being tested. And he said that the board's concern was more with the actual devices, because a lot of them are cheaply made and don't really know where they're sourced, and that they could contain certain metals and things like that.
I remember that conversation.
And so they're going to take a look at that. And then the board's going to provide the recommendations on or before November 15th of this year. So those are the 3 recommendations from them. One is they just kind of beefed up and added a little more detail for what's required by the board and adopting rules regarding the medical endorsement. The second one is requiring that any applicant to be a patient who is under 21 years of age would have to have a 3-month prior relationship with their healthcare provider and have a full medical examination in person, so they couldn't do telemedicine. And then the third one is the study.
Great, thank you.
Just ask it, 3 months, and I apologize for not being in 2 different places at the same time.
I know the feeling.
This is health and welfare's.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand the 3-month prior relationship is triggered in my mind. Is that an ironclad requirement for a person under 21, or is that?
It is not currently. It used to be years ago. Before the commercial market came on, that was a requirement for anyone who was looking to be a patient. And then when the legislature established the setup for the commercial market, they removed some requirements under the medical because they didn't want to make it so a lot harder to access through the medical than if you could go to a retail store. And so they removed that 3-month requirement. And this proposal adds it back just for the under 21. But you'll see in there's some exceptions if someone's in hospice care, someone has.
Yeah, I saw the exceptions
Yeah.
and so on. I just the 3-month thing, it's hard enough to get a doctor now, the first time, and I just wonder how.
I think it's fair for under 21, when we have made it illegal for under 21s to purchase, to have a need that has been identified by a doctor and.
Well, these exceptions, make sense if there are probably other exceptions that nobody's thought of yet in the rush to get some.
And we'll deal with those next year. Okay.
Yeah, I
As we
think,
do every year.
Chair
Well-
Pepper had mentioned, I think they've only got like 19 patients under 21 that are on there now, so it's not, it's not a lot of folks. So.
Oh, speaking of the devil, there he is. We're just,
The angel.
so we're talking about the under 21
Oh, yeah.
and medical marijuana and
The 3-month issue.
the 3-month issue, which actually I support. I think this is a good amendment. And the only 19 patients, Michelle was just saying you thought that there were only 19 patients who were under 21.
That's currently, yeah, for James Pepper, Chair of the Canvas Board, currently we have 19. I looked at that number, I think in March, it was 19 people under 21. The medical program comes with access to the high potency products, which are prohibited on the adult use side. I think if there is some reliable science to suggest there might be long-term consequences to people under 21 that are using those.
Yeah.
And so the 3-month is just a way to kind of ensure that there's no kind of like hard mill situation that under 21 is just kind of going on a website and just getting a card and getting access to those products. Like, it's just one more kind of guardrail to protect that kind of particularly vulnerable population.
Thank you, I'm supportive of that.
That is helpful. I am supportive of it. I think this is a good amendment, except for a little bit of redundancy. But there we are. Everybody feels that each committee has to have its little mark on things. And I think, so we're gonna need to do a straw poll of how we feel about this as we presented on the board. So we haven't voted the bill out yet, so we can wait for more members, but I'm supportive of this at the moment.
Of the amendment, I am too.
Okay, anything else? The amendment?
No, just a reminder, I'm just gonna make that one language, that cleanup language tweak and
Get rid
then,
of debilitating and.
right, and
Yeah.
qualifying.
Right.
And
I
then
didn't start
I'm
mine.
gonna be back later this morning on your amendment and going through your amendment, because we haven't talked about your amendment yet. And so whatever you decide on your amendment, then after
You're back
that,
at 10:15.
yeah, I'm gonna take the health and welfare incorporated into whatever.
Strike, we're doing it as a strike call. think
I
we
was
are.
not,
Okay,
it's starting to get there, but
okay, yeah, it is, I was gonna say, it is starting to get there.
right. So I am gonna run if that's okay, because I have to go to another committee. And I'll see you back at 2:15.
Oh,
Madam Chair, I spoke
Just
with Senator
identify
Lyons
yourself.
this month, it is about Michelle Channel's amendment that she's running off. It was to
you
add the
identify
cannabis
yourself?
retailers, yes, Gabrielle Molina, contract Martin, she's leaving the room, but it is to add the Cannabis Retailers Association of Vermont to the third instance of amendment because of the medical use endorsements, and Senator Lyons was okay with that this morning, it was a brand new
what's
thing.
to the third instance?
Yeah, in the third instance of amendment from Senate Health and Welfare to add the Cannabis Retailers Association of Vermont to that group that is going to talk about medical about the vape and also because the medical use endorsements are going to affect adult use retailers in the future.
It's that whole instance affects retailers, so yes, I think that makes a lot of sense. So Michelle, when has that for the next draft?
So I don't know if she's communicated with Senator Lyons or not, but I know Senator Lyons is scheduled to come in. I don't know if that'll happen or not because things are moving fast.
And what they're taking up now, it may take all morning. So, yeah,
Vice Chair,
yeah,
apologies.
the retail association,
No,
no, you're the growers association.
for the record, Jeff Pizzutello from Vermont Growers Association. I'm here with my colleague, Graham from
Yes.
Vermont. And we are part of a coalition, and that coalition is the Green Mountain Patients Alliance. The Green Mountain Patients Alliance is a member-based patient caregiver nonprofit organization. We requested time in health and welfare for the past couple weeks. We're not afforded that. But we would ask to be considered for any medical related conversations, being the organization in Vermont that represents the patient caregiver community for the medical cannabis.
Thank you,
sector.
Jeffrey.
So when I share that. and
Yeah, no,
we-
that's great.
We do object to going backwards in time and adding the 3-month window for those under 21 just to put that on the record. And happy to speak to that. And we would ask to be included in the appropriate, we think, organization.
And it's
To be considered for that study as well.
And it's called the Green Mountain Patients.
Alliance, absolutely. And we represent the state's medical cannabis patients and caregivers.
Yes, I got it. Great, thanks. So Macaulay has gone. We have,
We have another witness that, we've spoken about this morning, who's also here. The question is when he should, come in to testify, 687, and that is, cases okay, that.
Is that an amendment?
That, it is proposed in the.
okay, because we went through the amendments this morning, so.
When,
At 8:30. We did the no eviction, we did the, the adding additions to making the robust report
this
from.
is essentially administration comment and suggestions on draft, but then once they send it down.
Okay.
Read.
So it would be an
So,
additional.
yeah, statements, representing the agency.
We do have committee discussion until Damien can get here.
I know.
Okay. Now,
I just thought I could use that case here as well, because I know she's had his information since last evening.
Okay, well, if Kate wants to come downstairs and chat, I'm a little reluctant given we're missing the reporter of the bill and.
No, that's the whole point, wait for it back.
But I would like to have the information in the meantime so that I can at least look at it.
okay, the other option is we could have David testify on 612.
I think let's stick to 612.
But can't,
We're gonna
I
have
think
to
that's
have
a
more
big
time
possibility.
to have Kate. So, let's, while we're waiting, we have Ted here and we have David here. So,
Great, thanks.
gentlemen, welcome. And we're gonna need to take a straw poll on this. Additions are the Cannabis Retailers Association of Vermont and the Green Mountain
Patients Alliance.
Patients Alliance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
as being part of the study.
Yes.
Hi, good morning.
Good
Mick
morning.
Burdick here, represent a variety of cannabis establishments. And I've been working on this issue for about 25 years, involved with the passage of this bill. And when we passed this bill, it was intended to do two things. I think, and Chair Pepper mentioned this, sort of combine consumer protection with shifting the cannabis world from the legacy market, the illicit market, into the legal market. And I think we're on our way to doing that successfully, and there's a lot to talk about, which is really positive. One of the things that we've always said in Vermont on this is that we're going slow, and I think we continue to go slow, but as we have a goal of moving folks out of the legacy market into the legal market, we see barriers to that happening, especially for small growers and others, others that are trying to compete in this market and survive in this market, which is the most highly regulated substance in the state of Vermont, with comparison to alcohol, cigarettes, and others. And I mean, we see also by comparison, just in terms of the scope of cannabis, I mean, in 2021, which is the last time I had could find figures, there was 446 alcohol related deaths. Now, when I walk into any grocery store with my kids in the state of Vermont, I see a whole wall of alcoholic seltzers, alcoholic sodas, alcoholic everything. You can see that everywhere. Cannabis is far more restricted in what we can do in terms of talking about this product. And the issue that I wanted to talk about today was really around the difference in and the need to sort of suss out the difference between advertising and marketing. And right now, I think that all marketing comes under the scope of advertising and is highly restrictive. It requires prior approval from the board. Things like a post on social media, a website, a sign in your shop, a shop which is only accessible to people over the age of 21. Basic functions of sort of communicating with your customer base. All of that requires time, energy, and for folks, money to go seek prior approval. They may or they may not get it. It's a real barrier to folks actually being able to communicate with people that are over the age of 21 and others about this product. Sam Bellavance from Sunset Lake Cannabis testified about a week ago, had some ideas on how to change that. I think we've submitted this proposal. One of the, I have copies here. Yep. And the idea is.
South Hero Farm,
South Hero Farm.
that's the
Yes,
name of it.
that's correct. And, you know, the idea is to really hone in on what is advertising versus what is marketing, you know, and they're two different things. So.
Is this for each?
Yes.
Well, you would say that advertising is part of marketing, right, as a subset of marketing. Or would you?
Marketing, I mean, I see them.
They go hand in hand.
I don't know,
Well, there's an overlap.
sure, yeah, yes.
Yeah.
There's an overlap, but, the question is, should every time there's a social media post be put up, should that have to be pre-approved?
Vetted by cannabis control.
Every time you want to put a sign up on in your dispensary, should that be pre-approved by the board?
And do you have a notion from Pepper how much of the CCB's time this takes, these approvals?
We have an internal benchmark of responding to or approving an advertisement within 7 days of it being submitted.
And is it a challenge for you to keep up with those approvals?
I've got some data on that that I could share with the community.
Maybe after David's done,
Okay,
because we'd love to know how much of a burden that is to, as we weigh this, I think.
yeah,
And is there excess product that needs to be, you know, or is product not getting sold because people aren't aware of it?
I don't have the answer to that question, but.
I mean, I would think if you want to advertise more, there's more to sell, right?
Yeah,
You have the capacity to sell more, so I just want to double check
Yeah.
that that's true.
oh, you mean, is there gonna be a shortage of product?
Yeah.
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 So,
I mean, there was some, we did hear some testimony on where there were bottlenecks, and I don't remember exactly where they were.
Yes, yes, we discussed that yesterday.
So
So
just
what
on
is
this
your-
first change, striking out in this, and I've just, so you know, I have spoken with the board of it and they can obviously respond to this proposal. They've seen it. The idea that, you know, if you go into a dispensary and you want to get a free t-shirt with your purchase, I mean, is that really, I mean, these are people 21 or older that are going to purchase cannabis. It doesn't seem like that should be a restriction that we currently have. I don't know that there's other comparable restrictions in alcohol, maybe there is, but certainly that seems to be one that's pretty straightforward. Free samples one, I think that is something to consider. I have heard that there may be some tax department issues with free samples, and so that maybe a question on that one. And then on the second page, these are 4 examples of things that we would say are not considered advertising, which are signage or written material located within the licensed cannabis establishment, a text or email to an age verified customer. So there's customers that come in, they want to sign up for a loyalty club or, you know, program. They are clearly in the dispensary, so they should be able to, you know, they have been age verified, and they've expressly consented to that. So, the third one would be photographs of products that have been approved by the Vermont Cannabis Control Board. And I would add to that, you know, for posting on a website or social media, something like that. I mean, these are products and pictures that have already been approved by the board. And then the last one being websites that are age restricted to users 21 and older. And all we're saying here is that these would not need prior approval. And then this language in the bottom says nothing in this subsection may be accepted, false, misleading, represent that the use of cannabis has curative effects, or depict a person under 21 of age consuming cannabis or cannabis products, or is designed to have the effect of being particularly, that says typo, appealing to persons under the age of 21. So you would still have those restrictions which are in the advertising rules. Somebody could be subject to penalty if they violate that. It's just that they wouldn't have to, if they want to put a sign up in their dispensary, they would not have to go get prior approval for that.
So all these things you would take out of CCB's control.
Well, it's not out of the CCB's control.
But it would be complaint driven. I mean,
It
they
would
could,
be complaint driven or fact driven, yes.
right.
And so, it's for your consideration, you know, I understand we're at the 11th hour.
We are really, this
And
is just yet another
Yeah.
frustration.
But yeah,
So, there's a fine line for me, and then let's take questions, but there's a fine line for me between G and H, because I can see posting on social media. I mean, as we know, it's very hard to keep anything on the internet from anyone 21 or younger. So, it's, I don't know,
Well,
I think that's just an issue.
yeah, I mean, to
We
that,
have ongoing.
to that, just to that point, I mean, clearly, I mean, 21 and older is law, makes sense, where there's a lot of restrictions on who can be targeted in terms of this type of thing. But having honest conversation, I mean, I have teenagers, you know, having honest conversations about the fact that cannabis exists, I think is actually
That's
hard
for
enough
eighth
to
grade.
do. You know, the number one thing that we can do, and I think one of the biggest benefits of this law as it currently exists, is the fact that now that cannabis is legal, I think parents and others can have real conversations with their kids about cannabis, about both the harms and the benefits to adults of cannabis. And those conversations, I mean, we talked about this a lot when this law was passed, that the number one prevention tool for kids and cannabis and kids and substance generally is parents talking to their kids.
Or modeling behaviors, because
Same, actually,
Yeah, I mean, that's a perfect example, you know, we have, for instance, in cannabis products, edible products and others, it's childproofing. We don't have childproofing for alcohol, which is sold by the state of Vermont to liquor stores in Vermont. We don't have childproof caps.
I agree. The pros and cons and the cost impact to the state of Vermont they're cannot even be compared.
Right.
Alcohol costs the state hundreds of millions of dollars a year.
Yes.
I get it.
Yeah.
It's not the state's attorney, I'm clear.
Anyway,
We got rid of,
No, but I'm glad you bring it up, because
Yeah,
we
it's
do
huge.
need to acknowledge that.
yeah, I mean.
oh, we do. Every time we talk.
Oh, yeah, I do
alcohol,
I
too.
mean,
but
this
a lot of-
committee and the other committee, we legalized just a few years ago cocktails in a can in every gas station in Vermont, where there's no age restriction going in there. People go in there, they see the cocktails in the cans, why you can see it, other kids.
Mm.
And we're just saying there should be some balance and allow cannabis establishments to have some opportunity to talk to their customers within a reasonable framework, not making any, sorry.
So any questions before we just turn to a response from Pepper?
I guess, did you propose this in the house?
No, and some of this is just, and some of this is, one, I think the House didn't have time to talk about the advertising. It was something that Representative Byron was interested in. We talked about it. a
Remember,
little
he
bit.
said that at the beginning when Matt
Yeah.
presented this.
But two, there was, and you know, this is not a criticism of the board. This is a commentary on the reality of the world they exist in. They exist in the world of the statutes that you pass. And there's recent guidance that's come out in terms of advertising, which I think takes a very strict view of the laws that you have passed and says that virtually everything, every communication, some exceptions obviously, and there's ways to do it. It's not to say you're not allowed to communicate. There are ads in the paper, there's, you know, there are things that you can do. But in terms of things like having a website and posting and things like that, there are, these guidelines have interpreted the law very strictly, I think. And so I think some of the need to have some greater flexibility comes as a result of the interpretation of the law, so.
Trying to influence.
And this is something, whether you can do this, all of this, or, pieces of this, maybe it's the prizes and the rest of it, but it's something that I think the conversation we need to have to get to some level of reasonable place for these businesses to be able to.
No,
continue to
I
operate.
appreciate, and if there's a challenge with tax on the free samples, don't know what it is, given our time frame. Has anyone heard from Craig or not?
I haven't,
Okay,
but
and so where did you hear he voiced it?
when I spoke with the.
Okay, so Pepper can maybe,
Yeah.
Pepper, would you mind coming in? and
Yeah, let
responding?
me just, I have a
Yeah,
question
oh, sorry.
on, sorry, just prize award or inducement.
Yeah.
Why don't we just say it's $1? This shirt is a quarter and 25 cents.
Well, I don't think that's,
I mean, it says price discounts are allowed.
yeah, and striking that wouldn't mean that price discounts would be allowed.
No, no,
I think that's in
I understand.
context of that, Yeah,
Right, so why don't they just do that now?
I'm not sure that, that sort of seems like I don't mean this as disparaging.
Okay,
Here,
that's
but
all right.
this sort of seems like a game to skirt the law as opposed to just changing the law to make it clear that you're allowed to do that, you know what I mean? Some may be doing that, I
Yeah,
don't know,
yeah.
I'd rather make it more just straightforward.
yeah.
So we have limited time because we're gonna have to turn to 7:04. So, right, sorry,
That depends on what Danny's here.
and when is Damien planning? So we have Pepper until Damien walks in.
Okay.
So we're
Good.
fine for a bit. Sorry, I just want to apologize again. We apologize for being so rushed. This is one of the sad inequities between our chambers. It's our lack of time to deal with what comes to us from this. With having
I think they feel rushed too,
They do, but they have,
but let's,
they do, but they
I
have
know
all day and we only have 3 hours.
Right.
Okay,
it's okay.
And I would agree with that, and that, it's partially my fault, I mean, I could have asked for a companion bill in the Senate too, that you guys could have worked on all year at the same time.
or we could have at least
Yeah,
addressed some of the
yeah.
issues. They chuckle.
Yeah, I think, I will try and think about that for next year, if there is a.
Give you feedback on companion bills, because they often are just vehicles to the end, so.
Okay.
Anyway.
Oh.
Take it over.
Okay, all right.
Give us a response to
Okay.
David's appreciated memo here.
And so for the record, James Pepper, Chair of the Cannabis Control Board. I was gonna allow my general counsel to speak about advertising, because he wrote the guidance that we just spoke about. He's the one who was interpreting all of the advertising laws. He thought that he was supposed to be here at 10 o'clock, so he's on his way now, but I will, in the meantime.
Sorry, we're coming back to it at 10:15 or so.
Right.
We're giving 7:04, sorry, I hate to say this, but we're giving 7:04 its due.
Oh.
So we have been shunted and punted, so.
I will say on the advertising, the prizes and inducements that, if you want to add those back in, allow them, it's fine with us. That doesn't change our processes at all. It's just we have to enforce what's written on, written in the Title VII. When it comes to the free giveaways, I haven't spoken to the tax department recently about this, but issues come up. I heard from a person that asked, would it be okay to kind of have some free samples to put it together in a gift basket as a prize for an unrelated thing. So I had to reach out to the tax department a few months ago about it.
Yeah.
And they said that it is just much cleaner for a record keeping perspective for us when we have to go back and figure out whether people, collect the taxes appropriately, for there to be at least a nominal fee. Like
We have free
charge-
samples on wine and booze all the time that have a tax implication.
But I think it's free for the customer, but somebody pays for it along the way.
No. I mean, the person who
Well-
is providing the bottle, just like you're the provider, the retail provider of the can.
Well, then we should fix it.
I mean, whoever's choosing,
I thought
They-
that whoever's doing the pouring has paid. The tax. I don't
never
know, somebody would
discussed, we have never discussed that.
be- Okay,
I mean, I've never discussed that. In the years of talking about liquor and lottery, I don't think I understand that there's or a requirement to disclose that.
Okay.
Well, I don't want to be the
Yeah,
kind of definitive
but I think
answer
you're right.
on this
Okay, yeah,
question.
yeah.
It's just that, charge $1 was their opinion. There was a time over the summer when there was flooding, someone wanted to, a group of folks wanted to give away a free joint flood recovery joint in exchange for a contribution to this fund, that was supporting flood recovery. The tax department was pretty clear on that too.
So that's-
just charge $1 or
That's
something.
so interesting because alcohol prizes are awarded at every golf tournament I've ever been to.
Okay.
I mean, it's just as an interesting equity issue in terms of prize.
Oh,
think.
yes, and cannabis is
And free
treated
sample.
very inequitably,
I agree.
yes.
And so I think, I hate to say this, but until we hear from Greg, this may be a bit of a challenge for us at the moment, given where we are this hour. They currently, cannabis retailers could charge
$1,
$1 or 50 cents or something, right?
right, yes.
As a sort of try it for less.
Right, I mean, and the other just, again, inequity between cannabis and alcohol is there are purchase limits on cannabis. You're only allowed to purchase an ounce at a time. And so when you start adding free samples into that, it could have the effect of manipulating that purchase limit. So anyway, that's just a more practical concern about the giveaways. What I'm seeing at the kind of second portion, the kind of second.
Okay, so we're gonna
set of
switch. So you're
Yeah,
okay with
yes.
4 getting struck and 5, we're gonna see if we can get Craig in. And
And it
next
is,
page is on the advertising.
right.
Okay.
And so what I see this being is kind of removing the pre-approval process for certain types of ads. You're essentially saying that certain types of communications, which are currently defined as advertisements under the cannabis statutes, they wouldn't necessarily be advertisements that work for alcohol or something along these lines. Do not need pre-approval from the board. However, they still need to maintain all the same kind of restrictions that we're looking for when we do the pre-approval. You know, they can't be deceptive, false, misleading, representative use of cannabis has curative effects, depict a person under 21 years of age. That kind of all that, everything below H, sub H, are kind of the things that we're evaluating are as for in the pre-approval process. So what this is doing is saying, you know, certain things are not considered advertisements, but they have to be treated like advertisements, and it's up to the board to enforce that after the fact. So we receive a complaint that some kind of sign that's in a store says this gummy is going to kind of cure your cancer or something along those lines. And we get a complaint and we have to follow up and kind of assess whether that this is an illegal advertisement or it runs afoul of this, and then impose a fine.
So I know David did you want to say something on here? No. It's complaint driven. It will continue to be complaint driven, whether we strike it or not. I mean, whether we enable this or not.
We certainly get a number of complaints about advertising that we follow up on. The benefit, and this is an odd system, I don't know of any other advertisements that require pre-approval. However, this is a unique situation where it's a brand new market. There is no FDA kind of explaining, you know, therapeutic effects or policing the therapeutic effects. There's no there's no ATF kind of regulating this industry. This is us deciding what meets
So
statutory
you're
requirements.
charting your own course, our own course together here.
And I was just gonna say, the pre-approval model, while it's unusual, it is adding what we consider a benefit. And let me just describe that benefit, just a snapshot of our advertising review process. In January, the month of January, we received 41 total advertising submissions. So people entering into the pre-approval process. Of those, 20 were approved without any issue. And then, you know, that happened within 7 days, then being submitted. The rest were denied, or we needed additional information or modification of the ad for it to be compliant with rules. So it's 21 of it's over half of the ads.
So then of the rest that were denied but needed more information, how many of those 20?
All of them
Why?
were eventually allowed. You
Oh,
know,
they
it just takes a kind of back and forth with the board. Well, you know, this, you know, and the common reasons, the most common reason is what I think is the most challenging advertising restriction is the audience composition. So the audience of an ad cannot reasonably be more than 15% under 21. And so people have to submit to the board data with every advertisement submission that the kind of this advertisement will only be kind of put in a bar that's already being age checked, or this advertisement will only appear in my cannabis shop, which there's an ID check at the door. It's very challenging for people to kind of present that data for us.
So how are you on E and F? It strikes me you're okay, that E and F would be fine.
Well, again, this comes
But
down.
G and H are a little more challenging with that. The
Well, the audience composition is the thing that most people fail at. However, the second most is making false or misleading claims, offering prizes or giveaways, and appealing to children. Those are the ones that get people caught up a little bit as well. And so, sure, having a sign that's in the cannabis store achieves that kind of audience composition test. But if it then says, by the way, this, gummy is going to cure your cancer, then that's a pretty serious violation.
But it still has to abide by nothing in this subchapter.
I understand that, but what it's doing is shifting what is a pre-approval process that's handled by our licensing team to a compliance-driven effort, which has appeal rights. It really impacts our legal department in a way that we are not currently, we didn't anticipate the staffing of this. And then the other thing is, if people, it just that over 50% denial rate just leads me to believe that there is a lot more education needed on what a compliant advertising is in this different unique set of statutes. And if we have to essentially find, after the fact, find people money that they don't have. I mean, everyone is kind of on a knife edge in the cannabis business. That we're chasing people down, then imposing administrative penalties. I just
Don't get finished.
I just have a concern that it's a little too early in the market to make that shift. So
your argument is on, you would be, just to sum up, you'd be okay with not including deleting number 4 in the first section of advertising. Wait till we get more information from the tax department on the free samples. And not do any of the changes that they're recommending because the market's still too young and you think you catch that your process is thoughtful and thorough and that you're wanting still to manage that marketing and advertising.
Well, I mean, yes, just to sum up, sure, yes. And it's just.
I mean, that's sort of what I'm hearing, is you don't think any of this.
It's from a practical standpoint, we would need to significantly change what we're doing internally to shift what is currently a licensing team decision about advertising review to a compliance team decision. I mean, we're getting 2 new compliance officers through the VAA. So we're already staffing up in that department, but this is more of a legal challenge. Like this is more of like we would need another general counsel or a deputy.
Okay, so you may be a year too early for you. So it strikes me, what I'm hearing is we're a year too early for this request.
From the cannabis board's perspective.
From the
yes,
cannabis
but
board.
That's not to say that there aren't good arguments on the other side, that this is unnecessarily restrictive to what should be treated as normal business.
It is pretty restrictive for that, so.
But there's also no inspectors going in like there is for alcohol, that's one.
The compliance officers, however, could do that if in a complaint.
But it's different. Yeah, I don't know, it's complicated, I appreciate what you're saying, but I also appreciate what you guys are saying.
Okay, I was David, I thought you wanted.
Yeah, I appreciate the chair's comment, don't necessarily agree, but I would hope that at a minimum, the pieces that we do agree can be included, but at a minimum, I hope that the board would come forward and sit down with stakeholders and talk about this as an issue. We need to have some clarity on how this process is working because it's not.
Yes, we've got, it's good. Without our having to create a study to get you to sit down together, how can we move that forward? Because I would love to be back here in a year, less than a year, in 7 months. There's your doc.
There's my, but I know that Damien's here. So let me just say that we, as we have to do almost every year, are opening up all of our rules again. We're going to go through an extensive rulemaking process on our on the rules that interpret these statutes. So while the statutes won't change, there's a lot of kind of play within the joints as to what these words on the paper mean. And so that will be a public engagement process. It's all making this. So, I mean, that's one way that we can do this without creating a new study committee.
Good. And so I hope you will be right there at the beginning of this conversation. Thank you. I think we need to pivot. This has been great. We're coming back to 6:12, probably at 10:30 because we've lost, Damien just arrived. And so, great.
Yes, great.
Thank you
Okay.
very much.
We're
It was very
going
helpful.
back to it at 10:15, and it's a priority to vote that bill out today, so if we don't
It's a
finish
priority for
that,
some of us to do 704 today too.
that doesn't have to go to other committees,
This
so
is
it
true.
can happen on Tuesday, and as the chair, we need to get this bill out today, and we have till 11, so.
Okay, can we do 7:20 then? Cause Damien just arrived, I mean,
What's
10:20.
10:25.
How many, at least give up.
Time. I think it should be quick. I mean, we
I'm
should know
hoping.
whether if
So
it's
stick
not
around,
quick,
don't
then
go
it's not
anywhere.
happening.
We'll be right
7:04.
outside, yeah.
Oh, okay.
When I see-
And then what about veg? We didn't talk about
Reggie's going at finance on Tuesday.
it. It already went.
I mean, it's
I'm
being,
tired.
Oh, we have some clear
okay,
well
great.
on this. I think there's some
Okay.
two additions that we're gonna add to the study.
Okay.
And I think we're in, I think we
Okay.
understand where we are here, I think.
But I don't think we are where you thought we would be.
That's okay, but we are returning to it at 10:15.
Yeah,
So we
okay.
vote out whatever we vote out, that's fine.
Okay.
Just please allow enough time to have this Secretary Brooks.
Yes, and we, I
6:85.
think if you don't think we can be done with 7:04.
I'm hoping we can be done with
15
704 fast. We've done a lot of work on it. We have a new draft.
Let's look at the new draft and then we have to, I mean, this is more pressing.
Yeah, I get it, but it would be great to get this off our plate.
Where's Tate?
Damien's right there.
Is Tate coming in or?
He was.
Okay, well, tell him,
I didn't see Ted.
he can go back in 5 minutes.
He's in the hallway.
Okay,
Oh, okay.
okay, Damien, 5 minutes.
Well,
Good morning. Great
I
see
do
you.
have to make
You
difficult
do.
decisions at the end of session. I will just move that forward to Tuesday if we can't live within the 5 minutes.
Okay, I will do my best. I am having a slowdown on my laptop. I apologize. So these always happen at the worst times. So you should have a new draft of 704 in front of you.
oh, we have.
It has highlighted the changes in yellow. So there are only a handful of changes throughout.
It's 2.2.
Yes. It just loaded up. I'm sorry. The internet has really been lagging the last couple of days here. So,
Okay, great.
That took me. Senator Cummings.
okay. The first changes are in subdivision A2 on page 1, lines 14. The first change, line 15 and 16, indicates that advertisements for a job opening that is paid on a commission basis, whether in whole or in part, shall disclose that fact and is not required to disclose the compensation range. So the in whole or in part was requested, I believe, by the chair. And so we've clarified that. The tipped basis was also requested at the last meeting, and that's on lines 19 to 21. So we're requiring that it discloses the fact that it's on a tipped basis and the base wage or range of base wages for the job opening. The example was given of the bagel shop that says $25 an hour, but that's inclusive of base wage and tips. They could comply with this by saying $25 an hour, base wage, $18 an hour, whatever it is.
And, yeah.
The base wage could be the minimum tipped wage, which is about what it is.
Right, and I,
It's half of the minimum wage.
So that-
yeah, it's
Well, something.
just under $7 an hour. I forget the exact amount.
You know, the employer could not put in what they think the tip wage might be, they would have to put in solely that base wage.
Right, so an employer to comply with this would have to say this is a tip job. The base wage
Base wage
is,
doesn't have to be the minimum wage,
nope,
right?
yeah, base wage, a lot of it.
Yeah, so they could say it starts at $15 plus tips.
But you can have a job that has a highly tipped wage.
Yeah.
Average. You can't specify what those tips might be, if you put down $7 an hour.
Right,
And I just wonder what's the benefit of that?
I thought you could
Anybody.
specify it if you wanted to.
You can't.
You
can
just
specify-
don't have to, you're not
You-
required.
You specify the tip, the amount of pay that you would get by the tip wage, is that correct? How could you put in what
You can't guarantee tips.
you can't?
Right, you can't
Uh,
guarantee, but can't you?
Something an employer could do would be to say that we guarantee a minimum of $25 an
Right.
hour.
Well, the employer doesn't
And we'll
necessarily.
make up any tips that are
The
lacking.
employers who don't want tip jobs, I don't know how often people do that compared to the bagel shop. I've never. heard
I
anybody else who
don't, I'm
does
not
that.
aware of anyone else that does that either. I
Well-
think
So I'm
the,
saying this is almost misleading in terms of what the job pays.
I don't.
so you saying $15 an hour plus tips would be permissible under this. And then people understand that, you know, tips, you're looking at things, coffee shop, you're likely to make less than at a fancy restaurant. And tips, assuming it's a fancy restaurant, that gets a lot of traffic.
But
But
you have the same assumption if there was no information about the job pay and put in the bill.
But an employer can always make up the difference and choose to make up the
Right.
difference, and then
And
that is the average of what their staff takes home.
yeah, so I can't speak to the policy decision here. The request was to add clarity around.
Yeah, and I
tip
think we got
wages.
clarity around
You,
it.
you could take, I mean, yeah, you could say that they're also, they don't have to do the compensation range. I think the difference between a commission job and a tip job is there is a mandatory minimum with tip jobs, and then the base wage can vary significantly from place to place, region to region. But beyond that, it's a policy decision what you require or don't require.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
No, I just think given our time frame, if we could just finish the
Mhm,
changes,
yeah.
we've really tried to come.
yeah, I
We've really
agree,
worked
I agree,
hard.
yeah. Oh, that's
On
good.
page 2, base wage, we just defined what a base wage is. It's the hourly wage that an employer pays to a tipped employee and does not include any tips received by the employee. It doesn't alter the employer's obligations to comply with section 384, which is the tipped wage and minimum wage statute.
They have to make up the difference.
We've defined good faith to mean honesty and fact, so I look through the Vermont statutes, there are several hundred instances where the word good faith appears. We only have defined it in 5 places. And
It's
in
defined in
each,
the dictionary. In your-
it is also defined in Black's Law Dictionary. It is a ubiquitous term in law. But honesty and fact is the basis of all of the definitions in Vermont statute. And it just means that if you're doing it in good faith, your good faith understanding at the time of the posting, it means that you honestly believe that this is what you're gonna pay. When you post it, not taking into account things like you could find out that the labor market is much hotter than you thought it was, and offering that wage is not gonna do it. Range of base wages, this is just identical to the range of wages, but because we say range of base wages, I thought I would define it, so it's minimum and maximum base wages. Nothing would be construed, again, just like above, to prevent an employer from hiring an employee for more or less than the range of base wages based on circumstances outside their control, such as qualifications or the labor market. So in other words, if you say base wage $15 an hour and someone comes in and says, I'm really interested in working here, but every other restaurant on the street is offering $18 an hour. You could say, okay, do $18 an hour base wage. And the employer is free to do that. The final piece here is this is getting at the remote work issue. So it's definition 8 going over on the page 4, lines 3 and 4, we've struck out reports to a supervisor in Vermont and left reports to an office or work site in Vermont. I don't know if this addresses the concerns that were put forward by the businesses. I think the effort is to prevent someone who reports to a regional manager based in Vermont from having to have the
So-
range of compensation put in there, and if they're in a state that doesn't require
It's
that.
understood that this is physical.
Yes, to a physical office or work site in Vermont.
Should we say that?
We could,
I mean, yeah, the digital piece, like, I don't even know.
yeah,
If you're on Zoom, you know, like, so.
and I could say a office or work site that is physically located in Vermont.
Right, just some kind of call term.
Okay. So that is it for the changes. I know that was more than 5 minutes.
No, that was good. Thank you, Damien.
We didn't cut you off.
No, I appreciate that too, but it's, I know you guys are under any
Oh.
time pressure.
One is at our.
So I'm satisfied that my questions and concerns are answered. My question to those proposing the changes is, do you want Senator Cummings here for the vote?
Maybe we could leave it open for
Okay,
her.
so
Or you wanna vote and then leave it?
Bill, yeah,
So it's really just for just for the record, I know that certainly we and the Retail Grocers Association and the State Chamber, at least specifically, still have concerns with this draft. It'd be great if you could hear from at least one of us out here now or whenever.
yeah, I mean, Kate hasn't walked through the door, so I think to the extent that if you could leave Damien in the witness chair, but speak from there, identify yourself and say the specific concern.
And I was just saying, I was waiting for an email from Erin yesterday, but I didn't get one.
I believe she was going to, I don't know what happened. I myself had technical problems. I only just sent our comments. I apologize for that.
Oh, you said something.
Yeah, only just now, so.
Okay.
Yeah, I was late. So again, only just for the idea, something to flag at least two areas. There's other less, and I did have an opportunity to discuss some of these with Damien yesterday. Some of the scenarios we're concerned about and the uncertainty created, particularly surrounding a good faith estimate of a range of wage or salary. And then a scenario where, in fact, because of those considerations of qualifications and job market and things like that, which are the primary drivers for wage offers, is outside of that range. And if you only offer something that is below the publicized range, what exposure do employers have to a claim that they made a bad faith advertisement? So they made that advertisement that only offers to be below, you're exposed to a lawsuit over that. If you offer a candidate something above that range, and other people who either weren't offered that higher wage, they may sue the employer. People who did not, again, these are scenarios, but lawsuits scenarios happen. For someone who says, well, I didn't even bother to apply because the range wasn't good enough, and yet this person got a higher offer that I would have actually applied for, that's a legal uncertainty. There's a number of scenarios like that, which are still, you're creating a new avenue or new exposure for employers that doesn't currently exist, and it's concerning. With regard to remote work or work or jobs that are in or out of Vermont, even if taking supervisor out might narrow it a bit, but you're still reporting to an office. And so the uncertainty is, let's take the clear scenario. You have a company that is headquartered in Vermont, but it has facilities in other states or other countries. At the very minimum, the managers or the top management of those other facilities report to the headquarters in Vermont. So what does that mean in terms of implementing this liability? There's also questions, and I don't believe it's the intent, but just based on the wording, if you're a company outside of Vermont and you're advertising, say, for a sales rep or something like that, that does not have a fixed base in a particular state, but works in all the states, including Vermont, how does this apply to them? Is it only applied to Vermont residents who apply to that job? Or does it apply to anybody who applies for that job, knowing that part of their work is going to be based in Vermont? There just seems to be a lot of still questions surrounding this.
So Damien might be able to answer the last one, because I think that's a fair point.
Yeah.
If there was ambiguity, but I would imagine that if the employer doesn't have a physical location in Vermont, then they aren't subject to the advertising requirement.
Yeah, to be fair, not to
Is that?
speak for Damon, but I
Yeah.
do want to be in disclosure, I think that's where our conversation was heading. It's just that, again, we're doing a new law here, untested in terms of what it actually
It's
is.
it's, I have to say, it's best practices in many states, and it's already considered best practice around the country. So even though in many states have adopted this without
So
any
we
problem.
need to
Well,
switch
Colorado
gears.
has.
Yes, but
Um,
they've resolved.
So we're not gonna be able to take a vote right now, but we will come back to this.
If you can get your comments and Aaron to
Yes.
us
Yeah.
and to Damien.
You now have the
Yes.
weekend, so Tuesday is the drop dead date for the bill.
Yeah.
If I believe it has majority support at this point, so we can count on a vote on Tuesday. But I would like to clarify any ambiguity
Yeah,
for that.
Appreciate that.
So thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Damien.
We can call that later.
Hey, Brittany, folks,
Sure.
we cleared the witness chair for you. Because of our.
I'll give you a nice push chair.
Alright.
Thanks.
Thank you for being here. And as you identify yourself for the record, I would also just say, given our limited time, we should probably focus more, I'm saying this to the committee and everybody, on the issues that are more within our jurisdiction, things like housing development designated areas, et cetera. I'm thinking things like NRB and road rule. We care, they touch us, but I don't know that we can fully debate those issues and then have an answer for you, because our committee on this probably feel their jurisdiction is being stepped on.
Great. So for the record, Brittany Wilson, Governor Scott's Deputy Chief of Staff.
Jay Brooks, Deputy Secretary for the Agency of Commerce and Community Development. Thank you.
And thanks for coming on short notice, but
Sure.
I always like a bill that where people feel good about, so happy to hear your comments.
We'll appreciate the time. So I'm not sure if, folks.
No, we don't have any.
Apologize.
It would be helpful.
Should we make
Could make a
copies?
copy. Yes,
Okay,
make a copy.
I got a clean copy right here.
All right.
This is instructive to us, even if we're not looking at it all.
Okay,
So we'll
yeah.
get a copy.
Sure. So, that'll be provided in a second. Yeah, we'll start with the housing policy changes. First on the list, is just the consideration. I know there was a lot of, back and forth and some compromise on the date here, but if there was any, appetite to push the year after the interim exemptions another year, we really think that would make a big difference in what's being able to start for the interim housing exemptions. But also for consideration, maybe clarifying the language for 2028 that that's not a hard stop maybe on construction, but as long as the permits are obtained before July 1, 2029, just to make it clear that it is not like a hard stop on 2028, but I think that would be good.
Yeah, I'm very sympathetic to that one, because that
Clarification.
is our stated, even in just informal discussions, that's been the sense.
I believe that was in former drafts as well.
Okay, some years bill too, but
Yeah.
there was still a limit on the total, so how do you imagine that happening?
Limit on the total.
Years extended, like, so it couldn't go for 10 years.
Right,
after that.
so after July 1, 2028 or 29, whatever we decide on, then any, like, a permit will be needed after that.
Right, but so say something started in 2028,
Yeah.
Right, we
How-
got
how
another 3
long?
years after that.
well, is it another 3 years? I didn't hear.
Yeah, it's 3.
I didn't
like-
offer an end date, it's something to
Yeah.
consider just.
Yeah,
There
sometimes
needs to be an end date.
But sometimes the time, and maybe there's some caveats there, that the timing of these projects don't always fall within the hands of the
absolutely,
people
yeah.
doing the project, and there's appeals,
Right.
and there's a lot of.
We just talked about good faith.
Right, but if something starts, I mean, starts to me means shovel in the ground, like ground has been
Yeah.
moved. And normally
Or
there
a
is,
permit obtained, then I think that's a clarifying piece, is it, shovels in the dirt, or is it, have the permit been obtained?
yeah,
Right, and
those are two very different thresholds.
right, and we went around the bend on this one too, because we said, oh, good, they can just have their jurisdictional opinion by then. Well, jurisdictional opinion is a huge hurdle, we realized, for a lot of folks, so we made jurisdictional opinion optional. Which we think is more important,
Yeah.
but if you can, I mean, we are open to any amendment, so, clarity
Yeah,
on the
But since
continuation of
this is going to
construction.
the third reading today.
Yeah,
If the amendment, the draft of the amendment to be able to be presented on the floor, we
Mhm.
need to have that. By 1 o'clock at the latest, if that's sooner, we can.
Right, I would
Quick
say-
in the afternoon.
I would say between 11 to noon would
Yeah.
be Ledge Council's time to draft,
Right.
because housing related council are answering questions of the body from noon to 1.
Okay. Yeah. The next, piece, section 31, permit requirements and exemptions. I think this is again more of a technical correction. It's adding, or permit to the language so that it reads in both, AA and CC sections that no permit or permit amendment would be required. This is for the hotel conversions. Just a clarification, the hotels aren't always going to have an existing permit, so just to make sure that some aren't inadvertently excluded from that.
And you said that was in AA and DD?
AA and CC.
All my copies of this bill are on the floor.
Another one that I think is probably against the clarification, technical correction, section 31, C1 and 2. Other parts of the bill had mentioned that the units, the units created, shouldn't be counted for purposes of tier 2 jurisdiction. And so there's just a couple sections there that I think, folks would agree that we just wanna make sure that those aren't counted.
What would be the impact of that?
Other sections of the bill, have that language so that during these, short-term exemptions, it doesn't count towards the, unit generation count in which, developers are held to.
And tier 2 is where Act 250 will still exist. Right.
Correct.
Yeah.
So that would make it exempt from Act 250.
It's that 1055 issue that
Right.
we have hated a little bit.
Right, no, I'm
Yeah.
not a fan of it. But we made the other exemptions specifically in other areas.
Right.
Yeah,
So this kind of makes the exemptions in tier 2.
no, I think it just clarifies the other interim exemptions.
Mhm.
To all be uniform, saying that
Right.
don't count.
If you're doing something in
Later on.
future tier 1A and something in tier 2, that they wouldn't count against each other, from what I understand.
Well, this is before the tiers are.
Right, I've been using them as a stand-in language because there's nothing, 1055 rules everywhere else until we have. So.
Right, I don't know, I just don't, I just wanna understand this one.
Yeah, no, I don't know what.
Well, the impact of it.
Yeah. We don't have council.
Well, I don't know if I have the right, section either, so. section-
Well, we could
So all
provide
item-
this
Yeah.
and then Ledge Council could respond and
Right.
confirm if it's,
Mhm.
how we're thinking of it or
Mhm.
otherwise.
Yeah. And I'm just anticipating that there is a senator who would be introducing this on the floor. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't wanna like, you know, I just, like, I just didn't wanna assume that.
Assuming you're fair.
Yeah, yeah.
Or again, we can join for you.
Right, I mean, I
I
think
think we're,
these aren't
we're gonna do anything,
like.
like, these, we're all gonna
These are
be.
kind
Right.
of smaller clarifying
Yeah.
technical corrections, the ones we're talking about right now. That's 50. The next one, section 24, priority housing projects, reference to, statute there. Just needs to include another, subsection. So that subdivision is included with those priority housing projects. The one that's listed only includes development and not subdivision for the priority housing. I mean,
Oh, the subdivision, yes, we
Yeah.
had the subdivision issue in Middlebury. With that, what that JO was responded to in the favor of the developer so that they can proceed without a subdivision permit.
Right.
Should we clarify it? Maybe, yeah.
I think this is exactly the same thing.
Mhm.
So then, these are obviously, policies that you all talked about here, but, doing more on appeals, is something that we feel pretty strongly would really help, especially during this interim exemption, period. But, I don't know where the negotiations broke down, if there's any appetite or we can, but changing the 25% threshold to 3% of consensus.
That was a negotiated,
Yeah, I think.
I don't think that's gonna be a change.
It was negotiated and our committee is a little divided on it. I think, you know,
But
that we went back and forth about 3% of Burlington versus 3% of Victory, you know, like what,
30% was fine.
yeah, I mean,
I thought we were.
I,
But it's
we
it's been
did,
a
yeah,
negotiated thing.
Right, so
with
it's
the
gonna be,
chair.
yeah, that one would be.
For the moment, hey, we're back 7 months.
Right.
7 months.
And if we, you know, this one I think is a right topic for next year. I mean, it was really important to municipalities. And I don't know if you would agree with that, but this is where your bigger municipalities came in and said, we can't do a 15-unit project in our dense areas because it will get appealed. Then the municipalities want more control over appeal.
I don't know that that's 100% now.
Well, it's not 100% your members, but this came directly from municipalities wanting to sort of see a stronger.
Well, I think it came from us. I mean, the appeal, all the appeal issues we. all
No,
cared about.
we did, but I mean, that recommendation came from Montpelier, Barry and others.
So we got the 25 was put in here.
Yes, the 25 or 3% was our negotiation.
Yeah.
Against ourselves.
And it wasn't changed, it's currently 10.
No.
Yes, it's 10 to 25.
Yeah, we
Exactly.
changed it last
to
time.
25.
We're probably not, like, there's not enough agreement anywhere probably to move this.
On the other hand,
25.
This was a settled agreement between the chairs and.
25 is a lot better than 10.
I agree. It's
2.5 times.
Okay.
yeah.
It's more than double, it's.
And what about item 2 under changes to appeals thresholds? Senator, was that also a negotiated item that you feel like is a non-starter for?
I don't have the.
I'm
Did we
sorry.
get a
Yeah,
copy?
you got a
What did,
Okay.
which appeal?
There's another one.
Oh, okay, maybe. Section 2, okay.
Act 50 appeals.
Just Act 250 appeals? Not municipal appeals?
Actually, we didn't get that specific here. Probably,
Well, there's.
10 would have feelings on. We heard say municipal as well, but I would think that some uniformity there would be.
Sorry, I thought.
This
So
is,
front page,
okay.
under changes to appeals threshold.
Yes.
Number
This
2,
is- if I'm-
they have.
Right.
I think it was in chapter 117.
It's so,
It was
all
in
of
chapter
these,
117.
yeah, all of these, I wanted to get one back, like especially that second one. We are still facing like constitutionality questions that our ledge council doesn't feel. So you're saying it was existing language that we,
No,
oh, okay,
no, that's not.
No, I think,
I think
sorry, I was
that was
referring to language that we'd seen in I think 311 or
So-
maybe the earlier version, yeah.
these three exemptions, I love these 3 exemptions. I want them,
But I think we
want-
have to
yeah.
wait for our council to
yeah,
and this will be a next year thing, but I think the council is very concerned about the constitutionality of this, and anything around appeals is a concern. So-
yeah,
But maybe a little time and there's at least appetite to consider these. when
Oh,
we-
absolutely.
Oh,
We
my
considered
gosh,
them, we
yes.
discussed it.
yeah, this was.
I thought you heard some excellent testimony actually from Montpelier,
That was who, this was this section,
who indicated that
Yes.
even though with these new density
right,
opportunities
Yes.
that with various neighbors and everybody in Montpelier knowing an attorney.
yes, Montpelier, Putney, project that's gone through appeals twice,
Yeah.
that's 25 years.
Windsor,
But it was mostly
Yeah.
municipal appeals that were the issues. So you did
Yeah.
might wanna be more specific when you come
Yeah.
back next time.
Right.
Like, do you mean residential and mixed use in one development? Do you mean or? And when you talk about permitted, what do you mean by permitted? Is it local permits? So you might wanna just be more specific on what you're asking for.
We all will, yeah,
Okay,
like,
but
let's give this. section-
given our time frame,
Yeah.
and we have.
Yeah.
What you're gonna do to address.
Yeah.
Section 5, clarification on appeals, is there an update from?
Yes, that is, we have an amendment that changes that.
Okay,
That was considered technical amiss from the previous draft.
Also, that one's set.
that one says.
It's an amendment between me and Brian.
Meaning that it's being removed?
It's being removed, the refinement,
Okay.
but yeah, I think I'm writing on it.
It's somewhere, but we've addressed it.
Yeah.
Okay. Property tax valuation freeze, 5 years is,
That was
It's a strikeout. Yeah, that we, you know, even without answering the finance question.
Okay. Okay, so the other.
But there's not a,
It
for
wasn't
any
possible.
value of property, so that one's pretty tough. I mean,
So we should move on, like, we're not gonna address
At
it.
this point, it can't be done.
Yeah.
Right.
Wait, yeah,
Okay.
that's not
So then,
possible.
then the qualifying property definition falls in the same bucket. that-
I just wanna highlight that is big for Barry and Montpelier. So the next thing, senators, that you see on there in regards to the valuation of property free.
Right,
And you'll see later on in document also, dealing with.
we did this for flood impacted area.
Yeah,
Flood is
they're having conversation with Barry and Montpelier, just as far as yesterday, they're. The current link to the bill is still somewhat problematic.
So, and it's because of TIF districts.
We removed the TIF district overlap.
We took,
Yes,
That-
I confirmed that.
Good.
Yeah,
I didn't know. that.
I asked John Gray, who's not here, but
Good.
I was
So-
like, however you do this, just make sure that you don't have a conflict between TIF areas and flood areas.
Okay.
And they said
Take
it's
a look
in
at
there.
language.
So, yeah,
What's the impact of that? I just would like to understand.
we can understand that, but maybe not right now, but I can explain it to you with Ted.
Yeah, before we vote.
Yes, yeah.
And maybe just take a look at that language there, that short paragraph in the language. If, depending on what was put in there, this I think could be a reasonable compromise that everybody would support for
Mhm.
at the
to allow
bottom of page one or
Yeah,
top,
yeah.
somewhere else.
qualifying property
Mm-hmm.
definition. Parking bylaws, tandem parking.
We got rid of.
Where like
That
if it's
was
a
a-
hill we just can't die on and
Can't
like
do
we
it.
heard way too much about it. I'm still
So you want
interested
what
in
we
it,
had
but
before
yeah.
Correct.
and must be allowed. Yeah, we weren't that strong.
Right.
Or we had qualifiers.
Raising the extra 50 triggers.
I
that you
know.
had.
Yeah, this is a tier 2 issue that we care a lot about, so maybe we could do something in that first section you recommended.
Why don't you, can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
When you think about this again,
Yep.
the distance limits and the time limits, in my opinion, make less sense than the unit numbers, so you might wanna think about that. Because the distance and the time limits are what encourages sprawl.
Yeah.
So I think you get more support from other folks too, if you
So I think
look
this is
that
an
way.
issue.
You know what I'm saying?
Okay,
Yeah.
yes.
It's
And
10.5
It will
capacity.
ownership as well, right, with the trigger, as far as.
Right, so that's
Right.
5,
With-
yeah.
Okay, so that's an
Here's
issue.
Michelle, I think we're gonna raise all hell if we touch Forest Rack or Brokefield.
Yeah.
Just for the interest of time,
Got it.
um, right. Not to be indelicate about that, the property tax exemption is a finance question, and I hear you, and
That's long, I included all of the language.
okay, yeah,
Because didn't exist anywhere.
Yeah.
And the other governance changes. Which would align more like the
yeah,
PUC, like looking at, the JNB PUC
Yeah.
model. And frankly, I think right now, the way the removal of the board,
mhm,
our council believes is not constitutional.
right.
So it would be an unelected, unaccountable, full-time.
Right.
Full-time.
In that section, I'll say 2 things and then we'll need to move on. One, the judge for the environmental court is in the budget, so we just struck the.
So is it
3.
specified?
It's not
It's not.
specified,
They
we,
refuse to
that's a branch discussion that we can't wait into, but they
But
get
it's your
3.
anticipation.
It's
Yeah.
already,
Oh, yeah.
and we
And
have
they got it.
aspirational language in here about them moving faster.
And they use judges for multiple things.
We could do.
But
The
Except
rest
in
of
the
this
import
section.
action.
No, I know it's stating.
Well, the rest of this section, I would say judiciary should probably get to review. That has been a concern that's been raised, is that we are transferring quasi judicial powers and other appointments around. It's either a judiciary or gov ops question in some instances, so it might be fair to raise on the floor for the entire body to consider. That's where it's not our jurisdiction, but it's not necessarily the jurisdiction of natural resources either, I would
But
say.
to do that, it's not practical to do that on third reading.
It's
I have to
probably
say,
not practical.
What's
I
that
think
bonus
this
sale?
is sailing
Right.
now today and that
Yeah.
everything, this is a huge bill. We're gonna be working on on changes to it for the next several years. So I think we just need to tee up a lot of good stuff for.
The three
Those
or
are the
four,
governance changes though, because those I think are things that are important and maybe some of, maybe do that.
well, that's what I'm saying is, you know, it is fair to raise with the committees of jurisdiction who have expressed, you know, feeling like they could be consulted more about some of these things, perhaps before they happen.
Just really quick, under powers,
Yeah.
I think, there's some language there that I suggested we strike, or actually the NRB had caught this. I think the language that was left in that section was from when appeals were made with the board in that version, and so that language,
Should
I
go.
think should be removed. As it was just kind of a holdover from when appeals was before, so I can clarify that with Dutch council.
Okay.
But that might be more of a technical
This-
correction
right,
too, and
right.
if so, perhaps.
So these
could go
first two,
Mhm.
or,
Sorry, say that again.
So powers,
Uh-huh.
under governance, there's some language that was added in, I think it should be taken out, I think it has to do with the appeals going to the board. And
Okay.
so it doesn't,
Just
clarify
clarity,
that,
clarity and simplicity.
okay. Yeah, so it sounds like those are like more,
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you know, you may wanna talk to a member of that committee to, you know, it just, it is a big change. We were talking about a big change to a quasi judicial board and giving them a quasi judicial type authority. And that, I think, has been raised as, you know, something that didn't get enough airtime in judiciary, particularly, was raised in Senate appropriations. I see those 3 or 4 clarifying pieces as offered in a friendly spirit. And
so sorry, just before we leave this
Mhm.
section. The board vacancy removal and the powers, those two from that section and then the others.
I would say we shouldn't meddle more in another jurisdictions section that already feels left out of it. So I would take those to the committee jurisdiction. I don't know how you feel, Senator Brock. You're welcome to have it.
You mean with respect to the governance change, the executive director accountability, is that what you're referring to?
All of the governance changes, just governance isn't our jurisdiction usually.
But the judge, we have already taken care of,
Judge is
they
not-
cannot be certain, a focused appointment, they have.
Right, so let me clarify what I think we could accept as for further discussion and consideration as for friendly to our committee's jurisdiction. The clarity on the additional 3 or more years to complete your project after the deadline. The clarity about permit amendments, because those could be, we always look for things where there's a snag and we have to come back next year. And I said, I don't want to come back next year. I want these to be clean. So I think that adds clarity there. The tier 2, or whatever we want to call it, the rest of the state's jurisdiction and not having overlapping project counting and potentially subdivisions, which has come up. And if I don't want someone else to have to go through a JO on that issue for invisible lines for projects.
But we.
Those lines are.
They're important, but they used it to basically stop the Middlebury
No, I
project
understand how it.
after they got exempt under development, but not under
Yeah,
subdivision.
but, yeah, we just need to know what we're doing.
Yes,
Exactly.
so I am looking to Senator Brock to you know, if you need to step out of committee or anything to draft that, we have a forum.
So, sorry, we're agreed on the section 31, not on
Well,
the date, because that's. a
I wouldn't say we're agreed,
Yeah,
I
we're
can't
not-
say we're agreed on
Not agreed,
anything
we're
just
agreed.
because, you know,
But I don't
this
think,
is, yeah,
I think
but
the chair
you
was
see it
saying,
as, I see them as.
those are the
offers
things
for
we're going to discuss.
Yes.
Is what I'm hearing.
Yes, and we would need to take a recess or time to
Right.
discuss them in full.
And to understand.
or to the end of our question and answer time
Yes.
we have today with the Senate, we're doing a sort of caucus in the
Right.
lounge between 12 and 1.
Right, but we, you know, we are open to amendments to this bill, and, you know, this is one that would be offered by our
Yeah, the
committee.
question is,
so.
yeah, the simpler the amendment, the quicker, obviously, that you can get drafted, and they're gonna be available presumably at between 11 and 12 at best.
Mhm. Yeah,
They're not available.
They're not available, I mean, because that's where we have our.
Yeah, because remember, it didn't have.
So I am, giving you dispensation
Yeah,
because this
I
bill is the most urgent to go. We
We'll
can,
keep our vote open.
on cannabis, but
Yeah, you go ahead with that and we'll go
Okay.
with this, get something.
So those are the three
Right.
things again, can you just?
I
review?
will later, but let's get Michelle in the witness chair because I don't wanna disrespect.
Can I just,
Yeah.
I'll just say before we leave, we obviously, bypassed a few of the larger ones, which would be obviously more important from a overall policy
Sure,
perspective.
yes.
I appreciate you
Yeah.
all looking at these. At
Yeah,
the end of the day, I don't know if these smaller
Mhm.
tweaks would be enough to get full support from the administration. And so I just wanna make sure that folks are hearing
Yeah.
us say that
Understood.
these tweaks are gonna get, this bill to a place of gubernatorial support, but
right,
we'll, like.
We will live in hope.
right. But see,
I
these,
just wanted to make sure.
these are
that-
valuable stakeholder input from others engaged in this process. I don't see it as any more or less than that, but I appreciate that.
Given what we decided
Yeah.
to draft.
Still that list, like,
Yeah.
the message at the bottom of the
Yeah,
advertisement.
disclaimer.
Yeah.
No, we just ask
Thank
for
you.
that.
I never want
Thank
people to think
Oh, yeah.
like,
Not
you know, I'm
that
saying something.
Yeah.
No.
No, that's, yeah.
Chair, sorry.
Thank you, thank you.
Thanks,
guys.
you.
yeah, thank you so much.
Michelle.
What's that? Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Is it?
Was created this morning.
Is that okay?
Yes, great.
Yes, I'll send that to, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, question. Yeah, no.
Are they
As soon as we get this.
Right, yeah, go get one, cause I've just been sitting in this chair. for-
Yeah. Well, actually, yeah, we can't have you go. Sorry.
Why don't we have room service?
Call Brian and ask, what do you want?
Yeah, right. I was
No,
like,
I don't wanna.
there are people who
No,
would straight up.
I don't need
something.
to be hinting at it.
You're properly. For fun. Yeah, yeah.
We're gonna have a bite of this one.
Alright, give me a bite.
Okay, so I mean, my goal is still to vote the bill out today. It sounds like there was some clarity on whether or not we could move forward with some certain pieces now. But I would like to hear from. So Jill, I just wanna ask, I don't think there's, you have the latest draft of the bill and is there a specific concern in that draft?
I don't have the latest draft. I have what,
Okay.
David Mickenberg offered for advertising, but I don't have the latest draft. I have,
Okay,
I know what
I think
Senate Health and
when I
Welfare-
was not in the room, it was determined by, I would say, a majority of the rest of my committee that would not be considered in the next half hour.
At least, well, I think there was one section.
Oh, there was.
That was okay.
Yeah.
The prizes,
The number
Okay, so you're
four was
okay with the
Do you wanna
prizes?
see with this?
Not loving
Oh.
private.
You're not
but
loving
I'm
it,
not-
but
I'm not gonna
I
make
can
a,
tell you where.
I think then let's move forward with the inducements, in this draft, and then you can speak to that. But then let's do that. We'll leave that with.
Actually, to
Do you wanna go ahead, Senator Clarkson?
no, I just, where I thought we had agreement
Yeah.
on David's memo
Mhm.
was the striking number 4 under his advertisement. Tax, we still, I think the free samples piece, we're gonna have to wait till we hear from tax.
Okay.
But I have the parity between alcohol.
Mhm.
is a little problem.
Okay, but yeah, let's not think,
If we are,
okay,
if we can't get to free samples in the next half hour, let's take out free samples from the inducements piece.
I think until we have more
yeah,
agreement on that from tax.
I will say it's taken us a long time to get to free samples for alcohol, over many years.
and
Exactly.
alcohol has a different enforcement
Mhm.
process than cannabis,
It-
which
although-
we need to think about that.
Although you heard from Pepper that they're adding. to
But that doesn't mean.
So
that
they
they're going
can
to
talk
be
about
strict.
free samples in the future, but let's save the rest of it
Okay.
without free samples.
Okay, and then what Pepper and what we have to weigh is that Pepper,
And you say,
that David presented the rest of this amendment of the things that they would like to see go through without the Cannabis Control Board approval, pre-approval model. Pepper thinks the pre-approval model work and has a lot of benefits, and that every one of the requests that went through in the last little bit, 41 went through either approved in 7 days or approved in the next weeks or two after issues were addressed.
It does remind me of Act 250 where people don't bring things to you that they don't think will be pre-approved, so. It still has a limiting element that other folks don't have, but if you're saying that's a next year conversation, I would like to have that conversation next year.
I think that's a next year conversation because they're gonna be bringing on compliance officers. This would all then be complaint driven.
I would like that. Yeah, I would like it to be fair to other.
Right.
So let's let that go for now, but I would like to have that conversation next year earlier in the session. Okay, does that give you some
I
clarity?
have no idea what you're talking
So
about. So
we-
can we just,
yeah.
can I just say, so I drafted an amendment for you based on your instructions when we had met the other day, and that is what Magali has.
Mhm.
We went through the health and welfare recommendations. I've dropped those just quickly
Right.
into what I had prepared for you early, but have not yet walked through.
Mhm.
And so can we walk through this amendment and then you
Yes.
can instruct me what exactly it is that you would like in another
Very sure.
amendment?
Very sure.
Okay,
Okay, which will make you happier.
okay.
Do we have the Zoom?
You have, Magali has the
Okay.
amendment that I had sent earlier, that was
previous
the
one.
Senate Economic
This-
Development, yes. I'm gonna walk through on the screen that amendment, but just when I was multitasking, when I was in the other committee, I
Thank you.
dropped the health and welfare
Yeah.
language into here that you just approved an hour earlier,
Great,
okay?
thank you.
So since there seems to be a lot, if the advertising is a big conversation, maybe we can come back to this section, but let me just go instance by instance about these, okay?
Yeah,
'Cause
right.
I know you've only got 19 minutes. So first instance of amendment, this is striking out section 2 of so we're amending the bill as it came over from the House. You'll recall that the Cannabis Control Board asked that you drop the language where they were tweaking the definition of controlling because there's lack of clarity about whether or not that will meet the FBI's requirements around this issue. And so I think you had last week agreed to that particular amendment. So that's the first instance of amendment. The second instance of amendment, based on the conversations earlier, not included today, was to strike the prize language in advertisements and to strike the pre-approval. So if you have something clear that you don't want in that, you want me to unstrike the pre-approval language because you want to stick with the pre-approval?
Yes.
Yes, for
Yes.
this year.
I think
Definitely
that's
stick with the pre-approved.
E through G through H, sadly, I think we're gonna have to wait till next
Okay.
year.
So I will change that. Where are you on the prizes?
We're okay with number 4, which
Okay.
offers right,
Okay, that's
not
all.
with free samples.
Okay, well, in this version, it doesn't strike free samples.
Oh, great, okay.
Great.
I thought that was still to that, okay.
So the next instance of amendment, the third instance of amendment, this is having to do with the rulemaking with regard to cultivators. So you'll recall that in the bill that came over from the House, section 16 and 17 were the issue around allowing a municipality to establish these cannabis cultivation districts. That's section 17 in the House proposal. Section 16 was the setbacks. You'll see in a later instance of amendment, you're striking those sections, and in lieu of that, you're adding new rulemaking for the board to create standards for the siting and conduct of cultivation, including setbacks from property lines, roadways, and wells, performance standards, and conditions on operation. So that is a substitution for the established setbacks in the cannabis cultivation districts, okay? So do you want me to
Leaving the control with statewide with the CCB.
Right, they're gonna do rulemaking around that sort of thing, alright? So the fourth, fifth, and sixth instances of amendments are the things that you just approved this morning that came from Senate Health and Welfare,
Right.
okay? So that's all language you've talked about. The seventh instance of amendment, this is the issue around the buildings where there's cultivation occurring and the exemption from certain fire safety code stuff. And there was language that came over from the House, but then once there was consultation between the CCB and the fire division, They offer just some language that they wanted, but it's doing the same thing, right? So you'll see there, and they've already presented this language to you guys and you guys okayed it earlier.
The
We
Division
didn't
of
see
Fire
this
Safety,
language.
I'm not sure we actually
Not,
saw.
not fewer than the equivalent, I think it's gonna say 10 full-time employees. We did not see that.
I thought we hadn't seen it either, the
We
group
have
told
not
me
seen
we had, it
Well,
was about
I had.
barns and.
No, we had some language about it,
Okay.
and we talked about it,
All I'm saying is this, Senator Starr asked for this morning and for us to consider it.
but has the
No.
fire safety people,
This, I don't think this is new. This is language that,
This is not new.
Not new to
Oh,
this
yes, it
round.
is.
yes, this is what we have. This is the last thing that we
Right.
saw.
but James, so my understanding is that the fire division talked to y'all offered new language that came from fire division that you had sent to the chair and that I was asked to include in this.
That's right. This comes directly from the Division of Fire Safety.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we said we were expecting new language, we just hadn't seen it, so that's
Right.
fine if they're
Well,
okay
let's
with.
just read it. I
Yeah.
mean, we don't see like 10 full-time. Probably says employees after that. Or not family members who do not work more than 26. So they can do all of these things. The trim teams.
Edward,
Yes, what this is, this will take a building, a farm that's currently not under the Division of Fire Safety. It's growing cannabis, they're sole proprietor, they don't have any employees, the fire safety doesn't have jurisdiction with them. When they bring in the mobile trim team for a few weeks out of the year, I know it says 26 weeks here, but I think it's just the definition of a part-time employee.
Yeah.
They bring on a temporary worker who's, by the way, background checked by us, they have an employee ID card. For a few weeks out of the year to help move cannabis from the field into the barn. That barn does not have to come up to the full spectrum of the commercial building codes with sprinklers.
Right. But it does have to be equivalent to the codes that are used for farms.
For hay
When
bale.
they're drying.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, because there are codes for that.
Right.
But these are not where they're working, this is where they're working, not living.
Exactly, and there's no manufacturing going on here, this is literally just for allowing them to kind of store and dry their.
Well, drying stuff is,
Right.
I mean, that's,
Well, there's
farming
no,
is actually.
Yeah, there's no solvents.
hay baling is actually really
Yeah.
dangerous.
A lot of farming
You can
is
have-
very dangerous.
Yeah.
Dangerous, yeah.
But fire safety isn't gonna, if they're not going in for hay baling, this is gonna be less dangerous.
Michelle, you gotta just scroll up a tiny bit.
Unfortunately, it's
Because
on
it's
both,
hard, because
yeah.
it's changed language, it's right there.
And it doesn't say a farm building anymore, it just says a building,
That's,
just noting that.
But in the section,
Farm building isn't really defined.
that's right, that was their problem for,
Yeah,
that was fire
Oh,
safety's
okay.
problem with the
Right.
first,
first draft or
Draft.
something. Okay,
Okay, thank you.
so that, I think, I'm okay with that.
Okay, the 8th instance of amendment, this is adding a new section to establish the Cannabis Social Equity Working Group. And they're to make recommendations to the General Assembly regarding a percentage of the cannabis excise tax that should be appropriated to the Cannabis Business Development Fund for its uses. And so, right now, you have excise tax, you have 30% that's dedicated to substance misuse. And so this would be looking at whether or not you go and grab another percentage of the excise tax and send that to the, and start to designate that to the Cannabis Business Development Fund. So subsection B has the membership there, so you can see those folks who would be on this working group. They're gonna be staffed by the Cannabis Control Board. And they're gonna make recommendations to the General Assembly by November 15th of this year.
Okay.
Speaking of adding people, did we get to you in time to add to the working group of,
It's all the patients, people there.
yeah,
in the medical one that we.
Oh, Cannabis Retailers
Yes,
Association.
so-
No, it was the patient.
And the patients, I've got one.
I think Ginny told me Cannabis Retailers.
That's
So
one.
That's another.
The other-
Yeah.
I'll talk to
other one.
James afterwards and you can tell me what to do
Okay,
in the
great.
next.
it's for the medical.
Yeah, that's. forward.
And then the ninth instance of amendment is striking the sections on the setbacks in the cannabis cultivation districts. So we
Right.
now have that rulemaking authority in the
Mhm.
earlier instance of amendment, so it's removing section 16 and 17.
Okay.
That's the one piece I wanna talk about.
But I'm sure that's the one piece others wanna talk about
Okay.
too. Let's just make sure we
I
get some
think
clarified.
you should have O'Grady here talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We should.
could you?
I just want to clarify that on on the medical piece, that study group on in the medical one, that we add the crowd that's gonna look at that. That we add the Green Mountain Patients Alliance and the cannabis retail crowd. Okay, that's in section 11A, I think. That discussion in consultation with, that we add those two. That's the.
So right now, the changes that I have is like to the advertising section, taking out the deletion of the prior approval and then adding these two new groups to look at the medical program.
The deletion of the prize.
That's it.
You said to keep that deletion.
Well, she
Yes.
means still.
I'm saying
deleting it
like
is
what
the change,
is, so I
yeah.
need to know exactly what you want for your next amendment.
Mm-hmm.
And the only changes that I know of to this language right here are getting rid of the deletion of the prior approval. So you're gonna keep the prior approval. And then you're gonna add these two other groups to study the medical program.
Can you go back to the rulemaking section for me, just so I can read it right?
It's hard to keep track of, and rulemaking is what section?
And that's
Michelle?
what you wanna talk about,
I wanna talk about the
the setback.
municipal, yeah,
Right,
So now.
yeah,
We're
So
those
that's on the rulemaking.
yeah. So that doesn't need to come back to us.
No, this is what you discussed with me and O'Grady the other night,
Yes.
around rather than establishing something in statute with very specific setbacks and doing that, is that the board would be given authority to be doing some rulemaking on looking at a number of factors around siting, around setbacks, around density. You know, you have to be, you know, if you're gonna have a cultivation operation, then you have to be, you know, depending on density issues or whatever, you have to be a certain amount away from property lines or roadways.
So what's our date for that to come back? I mean, I like it to come back because I think we should look at it.
I think it's rulemaking.
I realize, but what's
would
the
go to
date
LCAR.
that they need to have this done by is the question.
It's just, so this would take effect
Right.
now.
Right,
And then rulemaking, they just go through the rulemaking process, and so there's
so
no.
there's usually no date.
So
There's no-
I don't wanna set that standard for a couple of reasons. One, I mean, we've heard from CCP, they're trying to gather the understanding of who this will impact, and I don't wanna rush that. And two, if we set a date or have it come back to us, it doesn't allow them to address individual situations that we should not be adjudicating through legislature. It
Right.
gives them the opportunity to do that outside of the legislative process, which I think
Which I
frankly,
think is good.
I wanna apologize to anybody who was offended, because I don't think it's good practice for us to talk about an individual situation as the way to inform our policy making.
Yes, and I think we should leave it to the municipalities to do this, because I don't see them coming up with different rules for different municipalities. And this is
Right.
basically doing zoning through rules, which I don't think that's a good idea.
What it's doing is creating a statewide standard that would be applied instead of leaving it up to the communities, which we don't do anything different for agriculture or certain other practices and uses. So I don't think that we should have a number of different standards across the state, and we have about 5 minutes to debate that, but it's an open question to the committee. I just would rather see the Cannabis Control Board set standards, because that's why we created them.
Right, but these standards are zoning standards. So that's why I see them as different.
Zoning still goes to a judicial process, and statewide determinations are made about what you can or cannot do once that's adjudicated. So this would be the only body where those could be adjudicated, in terms of a municipality being able to share their side, a person cultivating being able to share their side. The municipalities all be different, would actually be outside of what we currently allow for land use planning. They have to have some standards.
They have some standards, but they have a lot of authority within their district.
So CCB may give some of that authority back to them. They may create cannabis cultivation districts, et cetera. But I don't think we're gonna do a good job.
I don't want
Like
us to
that.
do zoning. I really liked how it came over from the House with.
That
with
has
the
to put
district.
that back. And create-
Interim setbacks until they create the zoning.
We created the.
So it's a question.
Until the towns create the interim zoning.
Right, I mean, it's a question for the committee. You,
Yeah, which I
Allison, I don't know if
just
you wanna.
heard about what this proposal
think
is.
the
Well, I'd
league-
like to hear from the League of Cities and Towns.
Ted Brady from the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, with the Cape Chair.
Sure.
Yeah, the league supports the language that came over from the House. I think establishing rulemaking process for zoning is a little problematic in our mind, in that it would create a statewide standard, and this gives towns the ability to address the issues in their community. Highly densely populated areas with small lots, where, you know, they were never meant to have a large agricultural operation on a half acre, quarter acre, tenth of an acre, whatever the new standard is, courtesy of the legislature. And we really see value in giving, empowering municipalities to have a say in how these operations are. So zoning exists to balance the public good with individual rights. And right now, there is nothing doing that in these cannabis operations in
Right.
municipalities.
So in the limit, I don't wanna speak for Pepper, but in the limited time that we have had with this bill and understanding who those setbacks would impact, it would impact, I believe, about 12 growers. To me, having only heard about one situation, but knowing we'd be impacting 12 businesses is not a responsible way to move forward. I don't think we have enough time to get that right, the setbacks right, and not know who we're impacting. So that is my concern at this point, Representative Byron.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Representative Byron, Vice Chair, Government Operations, Military Affairs, and in the House, I am the sponsor and reporter of the bill. Yes, it seems that about 6 to 12 lots, yes, but their impact is really up in the air as individuals based on how the municipalities may apply the cultivation districts once they're established. So 12 would certainly be the high bar, but it is definitely not the total sum as a presumption. It really depends on how the municipalities would go to it. So
And that goes back to my concern that it depends on the municipalities, and we haven't had enough time to know what the actual impact would be.
All right, so why do rulemaking? I mean, just putting that whole decision into an agency to make rules for the municipalities, because when this was first established, municipalities did have a say of opting in or opting out. So
That
there's
was retail. That was
That's
never
retail.
cultivation.
well, but the theory is there that local. I mean, it's a balance between local and the state.
I know, but let's just stick to what's factual, which is they didn't have opt-in or opt-out
Okay.
cultivation.
So
Like, I mean, that is a big deal in Vermont, right? I mean, for
Of
any kind of
course.
product is whether or not, I mean, you know, I don't wanna get back to a
Right,
specific
but
situation,
also
but-
the assumption was that there would be much more indoor than outdoors. What we
Right.
heard, there's a tremendously higher percentage in outdoor.
there
And there is an indoor, and outdoor is what causes issues.
We
with
have
the
heard all
neighbors.
kinds of things, and the Cannabis Control Board is the only entity in here who actually knows who is impacted. We are being called to the floor. I don't know what the trajectory of this bill is if we don't vote it out today. Senator Clarkson.
Perhaps we could thread the needle in the following way. Perhaps we could ask the Cannabis Control Board to come back to us with recommendations. Looking at the density, working with the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, working with the Growers Association, and come back to us with recommendations next year so that we can act on it. I don't think at this time, I think we're so tight on time, we have to do one or the other, and I think it would be fair to ask. It would be great to have standards that towns could then apply on their own, but I think it would be great for the 3 most engaged partners on this to work together, come back with recommendations for us to consider next year.
So I think we'll leave it there for now. Michelle, I'll try to help you with whatever we just
Leave it there, like do that.
try
I
to do
think
that.
I could support that.
Okay. So no change in the interim
Well,
is what you're saying, Senator Clarkson.
Yes, I think no change in the interim. I think that it's fair to have all the most interested parties engaged in recommending solutions for us that both are statewide standards with local application and local choice in terms of the dollars.
Okay. I have to,
So
I
do you
have
want
to
me to
add
work with James on that language?
please,
Okay.
yes. And I will just understand the consequences of us not voting this out today, and I may try to call us back via Zoom or something.
Yeah.
Late at night to,
I'm available.
okay. I mean, we wouldn't be getting the, actually just, we would.
So I'm gonna incorporate, I'm gonna do this new language, I'm gonna remove the other stuff, so the three things I have are the change to the advertising. The addition to the two groups that the board is to consult with on the medical
Mhm.
report back. And then removing this rulemaking authority for the board on citing, and instead of that, making a reporting requirement from the board. So I'm gonna do that language, I'm gonna have it edited, I'm gonna send it to Magali, and then you guys can do whatever you want with it.
That's fair.
Thank you, that's perfect.
That is perfect,
Okay.
including consulting with the key stakeholders, VLCT and the brokers.
Sure.
I think those are the keys, right?
So if I,
You can also just say consulting with stakeholders, and you guys don't ever have to worry about like leaving people out, because these guys.
They'll all
No,
show
I know.
everybody.
Thank you.
Everybody.
So, we are going to go offline sometime before 4 p.m. I will try to call the committee back together in some fashion.
After the
We'll vote.
floor might be perfect.